Welcome to the Appalachian Dim Sum podcast, where our entertainment is our comfort food. Howdy, Randy.
How you doing, Joel?
I'm doing good.
All right. Well, the first thing we really got to talk about is the episode today is Godzilla Boogaloo. We didn't really mean for this to be as much about Godzilla as it was supposed to be. Just ended up being that way.
Once I start into Godzilla, it's going to go that way.
All right, that's good to know.
Godzilla is my thing, and it's hard to even limit what I'm trying to talk about today into something that wouldn't take a week to do. So
I definitely saw when I was going through the little bit of Godzilla that I'm familiar with, I felt like it was an overwhelming amount of media.
Yes.
And I could totally see there literally just being a Godzilla podcast where that's all you do is talk about Godzilla.
It'd be very easy to do. You could go in and analyze movies, talk about series, talk about things that have been written, comics. There's not an endless supply, but there's a ton of stuff that you could talk about. But it's been the thing that's been with me longer than anything else. It's one of my first childhood memories, and I'm 50 years old now, and I'm still enjoying it. So it's literally one of the only constants that's been part of my life from my earliest memory to now. So.
What is it about Godzilla? Is there something you can attach to or
I think it honestly from little kids get into dinosaurs.
Yeah.
And early books I had were dinosaur books, and Godzilla was dinosaurs on crack, and that makes that leap into that as a natural attraction for boys, at least in my time frame, to be from dinosaurs into, wow, here's a science fiction dinosaur that's got powers and can shoot fire and attack cities and saves the day. He's a good guy and a bad guy, sometimes in alternating movies.
And those of us who grew up in the 80s, we really were the generation of franchises.
Yeah, and toys.
And franchises, toys, it was something where you enjoyed something and you immersed yourself in it. I was thinking Land of the Lost had dinosaurs and whatnot.
I love Land of the Lost.
But there's not this huge Land of the Lost franchise. There aren't plushies and figures and more movies. But with Godzilla, there's always more. So that would definitely make sense how you could latch onto it.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you want me to jump into my background on it, I can get that out of the way.
Let's do the menu first.
Yes, go ahead.
Today's menu, we have our introduction, which is what we're doing now. Joel will go into a brief history of Godzilla, and he'll tell us his feelings about Godzilla a little bit more. I'll give a little bit of stuff, a little bit of contributions when I can. Then we're going to go into our appetizers. My first appetizer is going to be No Man's Sky, the new Titan expedition. Joel, what are you going to have?
Yeah, my first, appetizers are kind of like what we're watching, what we're reading, all that kind of stuff, and doesn't seem like it fits in with today's thing, but it's just what we're watching, and it's Sons of Anarchy. So we'll keep you guessing about what we're going to talk about as we go.
And I'm also going to have Godzilla PS4 game. I'm looking forward to talking about that. I did play that because of the topic of this week.
And I think it's the one, too, you pointed out to me that I've had it for a while,
yeah.
And you sent a picture of it in a store somewhere for $200 or $300.
Yeah, it's like $200 or $300.
It's like a collectible.
Now, yeah.
It's just sitting on my shelf. I'm like, wow, okay.
I bought it for you when we worked together because I saw online where people started to say, "Whoa, how do you get this? Where can you get this?" And I was like, "Well, if this is rare," and I knew you had gotten a PS4 around that time. I was like, "This is going to be hard to get." I knew you liked Godzilla, so I tracked it down.
Probably back then it was $10 or $15 or something.
No, it wasn't cheap. It wasn't cheap at the time,
okay,
but.
It's
but I knew that it was going to go a lot. It was like $60.
Wow.
Wow. But I knew.
Thank you.
Oh, no problem. But I knew it was going to go more rare and more expensive as these sorts of games tend to do. Yeah. So I was like, I'm going to make sure he gets that.
That's awesome.
And then after I talk about that,
I'm still working through Bleach.
Yeah.
And then you've got another.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about the Deadly Tales of the Gunslinger, the comic. Last week on the dessert, I talked about looking forward to it. I'm going to give you some of my thoughts.
Yeah. And then again, I'm not bringing you anything, I guess, new from the last time. I'm still taking my time working through the late 70s, 70, 78 Marvel Godzilla comic. And really just kind of taking my time and reading those and sometimes rereading it as I'm sitting there. So I'm not getting through it very fast. But it's something I've been waiting for a long time. So I'm taking my time and enjoying that one.
And in preparation for this episode, I did watch the original Godzilla and Shin Godzilla. I had never seen either of those. And then our main course.
2 of the top 5, easy.
Yeah.
And then, the main course is just is what you see behind us. And that is -1.
Godzilla -1.
And I do not know what glitch I have in my brain where I always want to say -0.
Oh,
so if I say that, it's just I'm 50 and my brain doesn't work that well anymore.
Right.
So, but I know it's -1. It's on my shirt. That's why I wore it so I can remember.
Then we have our desserts.
Yes. Desserts. Yeah, we're going to talk about like the creator of -1 is discussing doing a sequel. It's actually announced, so that's
So it's officially happening.
yes, cool, yeah.
And then I'm going to talk about Gigabash. Again, because of the Godzilla content for this episode, I got interested in the game Gigabash, which has Godzilla download content. So we neither of us ever played this. We are going to talk about that though.
Yes. And then kind of a brief thing, don't have much information on it, but there was an announcement about Avatar: The Last Airbender getting some new material. So
I'm going to talk about a game called Atomfall.
and then my last one is 28 Years Later. The trailer came out a little while ago, but I think I was going to mention it last time and probably got sidetracked and just never did.
Yeah.
So
And I have 2 more things. I'm going to talk about TMNT Mutant Nation comic and then In the Lost Lands film.
okay.
That's our menu for today.
Sounds good. There's a lot to eat.
That's definitely a lot to eat. We do have an X account now. We are kind of taking it slow with expansion. The X account is Appalachia DS Pod. Only 15 characters were allowed, and Appalachian dim sum is 17 characters. So I had to figure something out. So Appalachia DS Pod is our X account if you want to follow us there. Really, all we're probably going to be doing is posting links to our YouTube video and the Spotify account.
Yes.
And if we see something that amuses us and maybe like if it's about Godzilla or the next topic we're going to talk about, we might repost it there. So if you want to follow.
I was musing to you and talking to you prior to the show that we were just at Katsucon, a big anime show. And I saw probably a good 10, maybe 15 Okarun Turbo Granny cosplays.
Yeah.
And kept seeing them. I was like, oh, well, that's awesome. I should take a picture. And said that 15 times and never took a picture. But those would have been nice to post. So try to get my stuff together a little bit more. I do go to a lot of shows. So maybe I can include some cosplays that I see at shows. Sometimes we see some pretty amazing things, and sometimes some that I won't post because they're kind of frightening. But yeah,
just like this podcast, we're still learning, we're still growing, and things will change.
Yeah.
But that's where we are now. All right. Joe, tell us about Godzilla, man.
Well, I'm going to start with the sort of my intro into it because I was born in the mid 70s. Godzilla started in 1954, so been around a little while before I was.
A little bit.
My introduction to it was actually a toy, and that was the Shogun Warrior Godzilla. First thing I can ever remember getting, got it in the case back here, if you want to bring the picture up. He is the big plastic goofy looking thing pictured behind us with the fist that shoots out with the spring, the little lever on the back of the head that you pull down makes him look like he's shooting out fire. It's just like his little tongue that has fire painted on it.
He's huge. He's like 12 inches tall.
It was the biggest, especially if you can imagine being 5-6 years old, I think, when I got it, how ridiculously massive of a toy that was.
Oh, yeah.
And different time frame too, it wasn't like you just go, you get toys all the time. You get toys one time a year when I was a kid, and usually it was one or two things. So when you got something, it was your life centered around that thing. And I always joke about that toys. That's why I got into running track and cross country, because I would sit around the corner wait on my older brother to come around, and then shoot him usually point blank in the face with the fist, and then run for my life, which is why mine had broken toenails and a broken lever on the back and was scratched up. But I found a nice collectible one.
That answers the question I was going to ask. I was going to ask if the one in your case here is the original.
No, if you can find one that doesn't have the toenails broken off and the lever broke off, and half the time the ones you see if somebody's selling one are pieces that are from different ones that they piece together to make one, and you can tell because the plastic is different colors of green and just sun fading and all that stuff. Mine was up in trees, falling out of trees, thrown in the sandbox, buried in the sandbox. So I played with mine to death, but that really was what got me attracted into Godzilla. It was kind of weird that, like, I think in kindergarten, probably the year or during the year that I got that for Christmas, we had book fairs at our elementary school, and that's a concept I'm sure that's lost on everybody at this point, where you get the little pencil with the little troll head that poofs out. But I got a book there that was sort of like a history of Godzilla, because the Godzilla movies, the first era of them stopped in 75 and really didn't get anything again until 1984. So I was in that window where there wasn't anything being made. It was just what was already out there. So there was this little book that I picked up at a book fair that kind of went through all the movies, showed the different Godzillas, how he changed, progressed, the suits and the faces looked different, and actually had this several pages in it about how they shot these movies, and it showed diagrams of the little cities and how they had airplanes hanging from strings, and even it's basically bottle rockets on a string that would launch. And that was how they shot missiles at them.
Yeah.
And they had like little pockets in the floor where they had cameramen and places that were designed to collapse, so when he fell down he would fall into the ground. And if it had been a different era, or if I'd grown up in a different part of the country, maybe I would have probably been what would have caused me to get into the movie business, because I was fascinated with the idea of creating a little miniature city and getting into a suit and walking around and smashing buildings and all that, and just the whole miniature set thing that they did with that always had me fascinated. So
that was one of the things that when I was watching the original Godzilla that occurred to me, is how accessible it seems, especially today, the filmmaking techniques that they used.
Yeah.
Like someone could totally just make Godzilla again today.
There's close-up scenes that were literally puppets.
Oh,
it was a wrist puppet of him, and you can sit there and watch it. You can see that
I think in my mind, I'm thinking back on the scenes. Like when he's first coming over the mountain, I could totally see that.
He literally looks like Kermit the Frog with like bad skin. I mean, just sitting there, you can see his little mouth doing that. And I don't think it's in the first movie. I think it's in King Kong versus Godzilla. There's actually a scene where it's like two like solid plastic figures that are unposable.
Oh, nice.
That are on sticks, and you can tell somebody is just smashing them together and like shaking them, and that's actually in the movie. And you're just like, wow, it's like, wow, I could have done this. It's like they made how many $1 million on this movie?
Now, is there any continuity between all the Godzilla films?
It's kind of this is a long discussion to get into. I'll give you the brief version.
Yeah, brief, please.
Godzilla movies are divided by eras, and the way they have it separated is by Emperor of Japan.
Interesting.
Which makes sense to them, I guess. It doesn't seem to be related, but the first one is called like the Showa era, so that's based off of the Emperor during that time, and that is everything from the first movie to the 1975, the last movie they made, The Terror of Mechagodzilla.
So within the era, are they direct sequels?
They are not.
Okay.
There are 15 movies in that era that they do follow a storyline, and then they'll shift to a different director, a lot like really what's even the modern stuff, where there'll be one where he shows up to save Japan, and the next one is he shows up to destroy Japan, and they all have to get in their super space jets and figure out how to repel Godzilla. So it's by director. There's not a continuous line through there. And then they go, the next period is really what got me into it, and that's the Heisei era. And that starts with Godzilla 1984, and I saw that in the theater.
That would have been a new Godzilla thing for you.
That was kid. Outside of just a couple things that I'd seen on like Sunday afternoon TV and one videotape that I had, that was the first Godzilla thing that I saw. Was the first theatrical Godzilla thing that I saw. Because I saw the 1954 movie. I stayed up late to watch that with my dad. then honestly, the next thing I watched was Hanna-Barbera. The same people that do Scooby-Doo and everything made a Godzilla cartoon.
Okay.
It was actually called the Godzilla Power Hour. There was a 30-minute episode of Godzilla, and there was like this thing after it that I didn't watch because I was a boy, called Jaina of the Jungle. It was like basically like a female Tarzan that they were trying to market. But I love the Hanna-Barbera cartoon. I think they had little Manila or little baby Godzilla they called Godzuki in that was the same guy that voiced Scooby-Doo. And he literally sounded like Scooby-Doo running around. He's like, "Whoa." But then the Sunday afternoon, we lived out here. We lived where I still live. We only had 2 channels when I was a kid, so we couldn't even get ABC out here. So when I went to my grandparents' house over in Manita, they actually could get channels from Lynchburg, so they got ABC. ABC in the Sunday afternoons would show lots of old Toho movies. And it seemed like I always called All Monsters Attack. I watched that movie every time I was there. It was on. They played some other random Toho things, even like those Gargantuan movies. There's other outside of Godzilla kaiju movies that Toho made, but the All Monsters Attack is the one where the little kid imagines going to Monster Island because he's getting bullied, and he helps the little baby Godzilla fight back against a bully monster. And
so is that whole movie just in the imagination of the child?
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's just imagining that he's going to Monster Island, and those were the things that really kind of got me locked into the franchise. And then from there it was random. I saw different movies all over the place. I ended up with a copy from a flea market, so it was probably a bootleg pirated copy of Godzilla versus Megalon. And again, 2 channels and a VCR. I watched that movie on repeat probably 100 times. And
have you seen all the Godzillas at this point?
Yes, I have copies of all of them at this point. I went on a mission to get a physical copy of all of them, and that actually became kind of difficult because some of them haven't been reprinted for a while.
I imagine so.
But yeah. But yeah, and I guess back in 2000 or so, that era that started with the 1984 one goes up until the Destroyer movie, which is the last one. I think that was right around 1998. I think it might have been before that. There wasn't really any other stuff made again for a while. The next thing that actually happened was actually the 1998 American movie, the Matthew Broderick thing.
Quick, like 2-word feeling on that?
Well, I can give you Japan's feeling on that, and that's the whole reason for the next era of their movies. Is like it took like 10 years for somebody of them negotiating to get their permission from Toho to make an American movie. Mm-hmm. They finally got it. They fumbled around with it with directors and different rights and all that stuff, which if you go watch that movie, you can see that. Finally came out in 1998, and Japan saw it and was pissed. I think the president of Toho, or the CEO of Toho at the time, says he literally said they took the god out of Godzilla. He's like,
he's just a Zilla.
He said, I watched a lizard with frog legs running away from missiles for 2 hours, and I was disgusted. And that was their opinion, and that sparked their whole. They unleashed a bunch of movies starting in 2000.
That was called Godzilla 2000, right?
Yeah, it was. It's the only era of the movies that's not named after an emperor. It's called the Millennium Series.
Okay.
And it was in response to that movie that we let you guys have this and you guys botched it. So we're taking it back, and we're probably not gonna let you have it again, which they finally did, and probably are going to be regretting that before too awfully long.
With my history with Godzilla, as a kid, I had seen clips, I had seen bits and pieces, maybe that were in other media referencing Godzilla. I was aware of Godzilla as a cultural thing.
Yeah.
I had never actually watched any Godzilla, not for an extended period. I may have caught some here and there. My first actual Godzilla movie, was that 1998 American Godzilla film. So
I'm sure there's a lot of people.
That brought me into even knowing about Godzilla. Now, I didn't become a fan of Godzilla, probably because that wasn't a great movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was my first exposure to Godzilla. And
I don't know that anything outside of the 1984 one from that bunch because they followed it up. Some of those were kind of linear, like the story from that continued into Biolante, and but I don't know that anything outside of '84 got like a wide U.S. release.
Okay.
You probably found like those theaters that were showing it on one weekend only kind of thing. I never saw any of those other movies in the theater. I just saw the 1984 movie. But
Real quick about the 1998 movie, the American one. I remember thinking it was interesting that Godzilla had kids. Is Godzilla female in any of the other media?
he has kids, but it's never. I mean, there's a movie called Son of Godzilla. There's several where there's a baby Godzilla, and they never really kind of addressed that.
Well, I know in Shin Godzilla, and we'll talk about this later, they were playing around with the concept of mitosis, where Godzilla replicates by just splitting.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you could look at Godzilla as not necessarily being, and we refer to him as him, but it could just be where, well, Godzilla lays an egg and it becomes another Godzilla.
There's a thing into the sort of the canon of Godzilla called G cells. That's the whole thing with Biolante, is there's somebody messing around with experiments with the G cells, get it into plants. This basically, it's like almost like a giant rose bush that just becomes Godzilla and keeps mutating and becomes more powerful than him, but he still beats it.
And Godzilla's always been sort of outside of the biological norm.
Yeah, it's all
radiation,
radioactive mutation. That's the whole idea behind the whole thing. So
hey, it works.
Yeah.
All right. Well, as I said, since I wasn't really a big fan of Godzilla growing up or since, I just know Godzilla more as a cultural icon. I like the fact that there's a marine iguana on the Galapagos Island that looks to me like a tiny little Godzilla.
Yep.
I could totally see, and I don't know if this actually inspired the design of any of the Godzillas, but
it does. If you watch movies as they were able to get away from the suits with the little guy in it walking around,
right,
doing little karate poses and stuff, to where they actually started doing CGI. They show him swimming, and he swims exactly like
very much like that,
the iguanas, and that was kind of their complaint in the with the 1998 movie, is that they just turned him into an iguana, and
he was more like a T-Rex, really.
Yeah. They said iguana head with frog legs was how they referred to it.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure I haven't looked into the making of that film or anything. Not too terribly interested, but I'm sure Jurassic Park had a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
And I found out in the past couple of years, that in 1942 there was a animated short called Superman versus the Arctic Giant.
I remember you said that to me back. Yeah. It's been a while.
The thing looks like Godzilla. It gets thawed, and it just runs amok in Metropolis, busting things up, tearing down buildings, kicking people and cars, and just making a big old mess. And Superman comes in and saves the day, of course.
Yeah.
But that really kind of makes me wish at some point there was a Superman versus Godzilla movie. I could have totally seen that being something back in the 80s.
I'm kind of into that right now with the comic. We'll talk to that when we get to that.
Okay. All right.
There's no Superman, but it's the Marvel version of that.
Right. I remember you mentioned that a little bit last time. All right, and I guess that's all we have for the introduction.
So it's time for the appetizer.
That's right. What do you have?
I promise at some point I'm going to go somewhere other than Fincastle for this, but for at least the first few shows, I'm going to probably stay with our the little heritage market, which I mentioned before, is the little German Baptist market, just literally 4 or 5 miles up the road from here. I brought their pimento cheese last time, which is ridiculous. This is their contender for the other most ridiculous thing they have. It doesn't look like it's that fancy. It's just their chicken salad. I don't get excited about chicken salad or tuna salad or any kind of salad. I got that one time as just a cheap thing to get for lunch, and came back here and took a bite of it, and then I started calling people. I was like, "Oh my gosh, you have to try this!" I don't know how to put words to it. It's very, very sweet, very savory. I don't know what they do to their stuff there. It's ridiculous. I guess it's maybe just the power of actual homemade food versus processed mass grocery store garbage that we're just used to eating. When you actually eat something good, you're just like, oh my goodness. So again, in Appalachian style, I usually just put this on like a Tostito chip and
Absolutely.
and eat it. It awesome on a sandwich, awesome on toast. Um, Stick your hand in it and just just go to town. It's good stuff.
All right,
So,
and we'll be back with the rest of our appetizers. Oh, that was great.
the proof is in the pudding there.
Yeah.
We left a little bit, so I can taunt my wife with it later.
That is definitely like you were talking about last week, how you just need a medium to get it to your mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're eating the chips, so you can eat that.
I'd go outside and get a stick and just eat it off of a stick.
It was great.
What was the thing that we found? We were looking up ingredients, trying to figure out what the secret ingredient was, and
Oh goodness, grab it again. We'll
it was
talk
some
about
kind
it.
of Irish moss.
Irish moss. It's a carrageenan. Carrageenan.
It was a seaweed.
Yeah, it's like an Irish seaweed moss thing.
I
You just gave away their secret.
I need to go to Ireland and walk around the shores and
Just chew on the moss.
just get a bucket.
It's like a red moss too. That's very interesting. I think that might have been the actual thing that gave it that sweet flavor.
Yeah, it's not like just a relish. It's like there's something else there.
Right. I thought it was like a pickle relish or something. But
There's
yeah.
probably some sugars or something, but there's another level of stuff that they've got going on down there. And again, at some point, I'm gonna like stray more than 4 miles from the house and maybe find something interesting to bring, but not yet.
I don't know if they all taste like that. We just keep getting stuff from that. Man,
That's gonna be
it's 2 for 2 so far.
2 years from now. I'm gonna be like, now I'm on aisle 2.
That's right. Well, our other appetizers. I'll start off. I'm gonna be talking about No Man's Sky. Now this is a game I've been playing for years.
What was the hours that you looked up?
I recently, on the PlayStation app, I've played it on the PlayStation 4, and on the PlayStation app, it told me how many hours I've put into this game. Now, on my main save, I have like 500 something hours. That's the story and all that. But I've created other saves for expeditions, for creative, trying out different modes. Yeah, 2,214 hours. It's like 94 days, you said?
Yeah. 94 24-hour days.
24 hours. This is since 2016. And there have been times where I'll just pause it and I'll go away and I'll think I'm going to come right back, but I'm gone for, 30 minutes, an hour or so. But not that much. I've probably put a solid, I would say 1,800 hours at least into it. Goodness.
The game that I can relate to that, which again is going to age me, was the old Pirates on the Macintosh, where
Sid Meier's?
yeah, you could just sail around, you could attack places, you could attack ships. You tried to marry like a governor's daughter, but it did have a time limit. Like you aged as the game went on, and you aged pretty quickly, and basically you would be forced into retirement by the time you were probably like 40 if you made it. If you didn't get injured a lot, if you got injured a lot, you were forced into retirement as a penniless pauper at age 32. But that's what I relate to watching you play that a little bit, is that's just like a massive version of that where you can just go wherever you want to and kind of do whatever you want to. And it's an amazing just to watch somebody play it.
It's really a technical showpiece.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the best thing about No Man's Sky is just as you play it, you're just in awe of what they were able to accomplish.
I watched my son play, there's a horror space game called Prey. That
It takes place on the moon, right?
Yeah, or like a base or something.
Base.
But
Yes, maybe a space station.
basically you're just running from this thing that's just trying to maul you for the whole game. But a lot of the animation and stuff reminded me of that game, but that's on obviously a next level of
There are 18 quintillion planets.
yeah. And you can you can visit like a planet, and if somebody else is mining gold or mining something, you can just show up and like take it.
Yeah. Oh, I've been robbed before.
Yeah.
You could turn PvP off, but as with most kinds of games where you have optional PvP, having that little bit of danger is helpful.
I played it and just shot at animals
Yeah.
on your game for a little while, but I could see getting into that and building your own stations. And
But this is the 17th expedition for No Man's Sky. And they keep coming out with them, and all the expeditions, all the updates they've done are completely free.
okay.
I've only ever paid for the initial game. I've bought the game for other people because I want to show Hello Games
Yeah.
I want to give them my support. So I've bought it for other people. Like, hey, play this game.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing about this particular expedition is gas giants. So like Jupiter.
Okay.
So they added these gas giants, and when you go down inside of them, it's just electrical storms, gravity wells, radiation storms. They're very dangerous, but it is just cool.
Yeah, I mean, just you always wonder. You see the planets. What it'd be like to be on the surface of any planet,
and one of the things that I was kind of pleased about during this expedition is I noticed the gravity being a lot heavier on the gas giants, and that's one of the things that they say about the core of Jupiter is they think it actually might have a solid core because all the gases have been pulled together by the immense gravity of Jupiter.
Yeah.
So there is a solid core you could technically land on, but
you could get
with our technology now, if you actually got to it, it'd crush you.
Yeah.
You'd die before you get there. But not No Man's Sky.
What was an older movie, Europa Report? Did you ever see that?
No.
It's one of the moons of one of the big gas
Europa,
giants.
yeah.
I don't know. Is it Saturn or Jupiter?
One of them.
Saturn, probably. But they go there and they discover water and life and stuff on the planet. But it was a really cool attempt to be like just an exploration of a planet that is completely foreign. Wasn't like anything crazy in the movie. It was just them basically trying to get land and get from one point to another and collect some samples and then finding out there was life there. But
well, it says it is an icy moon of Jupiter and may have liquid water. So I guess that movie was kind of going off of the actual.
But just having a
science.
game where you could do that anywhere, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I'm not as much of a gamer is just because if I get into stuff like that, I get absolutely nothing else done, and I've got too many other things I've got to do.
I can understand that.
I could see like our business just folding because I was playing that for.
But I had to go to the next planet.
I was flying to Jupiter.
It is, as someone who does play a lot of games, it's hard to not play certain games because you're like, I just don't have time for that.
Yeah.
Like I'm really into No Man's Sky. I would love to play Star Citizen. I can't do two.
Yeah.
Because Star Citizen is more of a space sim. No Man's Sky is almost kind of like a space adventure game.
Yeah.
It's not really real heavy on the simulation aspects, such as like you got fuel. You're driving about. You're flying about, and your spacecraft will never actually run out of fuel, but you have a pulse drive that you have to refill, that sort of thing. And all you do is you open up your inventory and you press on a particular like carbon or something, and you fill up your fuel. You don't have to actually go to a fuel depot or anything like that.
Gotcha.
So it's just they try to make it more accessible. I've told people it's like almost like a space arcade game, and you can tweak it however you want. And really, No Man's Sky fulfills my spacefaring needs.
Oh, yeah.
At least for now.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess my appetizer, first thing that we're doing, this is, again, shifting gears into what we're watching. We started watching Sons. I watched it all the way through back when I had Netflix years ago. Sons of Anarchy. Started watching it again with our daughter, and then when she graduated high school, got into working and stuff, she just didn't really have time to keep watching it. And I think maybe my son watched a little bit of it with us too, but he's just too busy going to school. It's too hard to watch a show like that with 4 different people on their schedule, so we just stopped. And we finished, I can't remember what we finished before we started watching that. We're looking at the next thing to go and watch, so we went back and started watching that again. We're in the second to last season of it, and that's a different era of TV. I mean, I think we were talking about it in relation to something else about how some shows are just so scared to even try to do anything creative because they're trying to not offend anybody.
Yeah.
Sons of Anarchy, I think, was still in that time frame where they were trying to offend everybody.
When was it made?
Oh, man. I don't know. Without looking, it would be probably late 2000s. I don't know if it got into the teens or not, but it ran for 7 seasons, I think, so it probably ran...
See, 2008. It looks like it started. See,
Yeah.
I've never watched one episode of Sons of Anarchy, but in my mind, I remember hearing about it like around the time I was watching Breaking Bad.
It's
like
very much in that vein.
Yeah, that era was like almost like a renaissance for television. I think.
And it's I guess what's the right word? Anti-hero.
Yeah.
That's all these shows that. I guess when they decided that being masculine was bad. that the only way that you could have a masculine character was for it to be a bad guy, and that was Breaking Bad, and that was Sons of Anarchy. Everybody in it, they're all awful.
Some of the criticisms I hear of these kinds of movies and TV shows is people say the people who are fans of these characters misunderstand. They don't understand the character because they're fans. It's like, no, we understand the character just fine.
Yeah,
we empathize. We can understand how a person can get to that point.
It's probably as close as I ever come to watching something that's like a reality show where you just watch people just act like animals for 30 minutes and you're like, wait, this is entertainment, but this is at least well written, and you know it's not real, so it's not as, I guess reality shows aren't real either as far as that goes.
Now I do know Ron Perlman's in it. Yeah. Is he in the whole series?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of characters that come and go. And it's interesting too. It'd be fun to go back and see which ones left because they had to write them out because of another project or something, and how many they intended to go at a certain time from the start. I know The Walking Dead was that way, where they had to shift away from the books because characters got into other projects, and when they decided, like Carl's dad decided Carl needed to leave.
Like the actor's father?
Yeah.
Not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I don't know what the actor's name is, but the kid that played Carl.
Right.
Decided he needed to do something else, so he just made him walk away from the show, so they had to write him out of the show, and he was a major character in the next arc with all the Whisperers in the book, but they had to get rid of him.
People have been pretty critical. I've heard people be pretty critical about how they wrote off Carl.
Yeah, and I think it was because they were
expecting him in the next
arc.
They're
like, oh, we have to continue next season without him. And same thing with Sons. I think there was a couple of characters that come and go with that, but it's a very twisty show. It's one of those things that you're always wondering. We're sitting there talking while the show's going on. Which character we're going to lose this time kind of thing. But it's probably a little bit of a sick form of entertainment, I guess, to watch shows like that. But
unlike like Game of Thrones, which killed off a lot of people, Walking Dead killed off a lot of people. Yeah. Sons of Anarchy, is that based on anything?
I think it might have been. There might have been a book or something.
Okay.
I don't know that for sure, but there's kind of this underlying thing throughout the series where he's reading his dad's diaries. The dad was dead before the show started in the storyline. So that's, to me, seems like something that would fit into like some kind of book or book series, but I have no idea. We've watched it because I like a lot of the actors that are in it.
But not anything that the fans would look at and try to follow, kind of like The Walking Dead. Like, well, you're not following the continuity of the comic books.
Yeah,
nothing like that.
No, if it's anything, it's probably a novel or something. At this point, they're probably so far beyond whatever that would have been.
I'm thinking like the show Reacher. I know there's a couple of books that are like a small series, as far as I'm aware, of the Reacher character. I don't think the series is following it along. It's just, well, we're taking this character, we're going to make a series out of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So where would you put this? Like, would you consider this one of the best shows of all time, or just a good show?
It's a good show. There's a lot of parts of it that would not appeal to different groups of people. I guess growing up where I've grown up, that I can relate to a lot of the types of characters here. I've seen them from several different sides of things I've done in my life, from growing up around some and then working around some in law enforcement. But
yeah, I'm sure that gives you a certain perspective on the show that someone like me would probably not see.
Yeah, I mean, everything is obviously hyper exaggerated for the show, but I've dealt with people that are supposedly in these types of worlds before too, so I guess that makes it a little bit more interesting to me. My wife just likes the show, I think, because of all the whatever you want to call it, the palace intrigue. It's not a palace, but all the back and forth between the family and all that stuff. And it's well written. It's not just throwing crap at the wall and seeing what sticks. It's from that time frame where people wrote a story with an overall vision and had a plan, and you can tell the difference when you watch something like that versus something where we got greenlit to do this series and we have absolutely no idea what we're doing, so let's just start making up stuff.
So it doesn't drone on.
It's pretty long, but no, it's
great.
it's not even like The Walking Dead got into where it was just kind of recycling the same idea with different characters.
I think that's where I stopped with The Walking Dead, where I felt like it was just the same themes,
Different bad guys.
and they were switching the bad guys out, and when they made Negan a good guy, I'm like, whatever.
Yeah,
When it seemed like they were grasping at narrative straws, trying to build some sort of house.
when they got to the post-pandemic stuff that The Walking Dead did, and I think I was watching Fear the Walking Dead at the same time. Some of their efforts to create bad guys were just lame. And it was somebody that didn't have writing experience that was trying to copy something they saw earlier in the series, and it just didn't turn out well. But yeah, we're not too far from finishing that up, so that'll maybe by the time we get to our next show, we'll be done watching that series. But
all right. I personally tend to have some trouble getting through series because I'm not a binger. I don't want to sit down and watch the same show for hours on end.
yeah,
The most I'll do is like one episode a day.
we might do two if we start the first one early enough. But at our age too, if we try to go beyond that, we're asleep.
You're asleep. Yeah, I hear that.
So
In preparation for this topic, I've played the PlayStation 4 Godzilla game,
yeah,
and I went through the first few levels.
yeah.
Tried out a couple of different modes. It's Godzilla. I don't know what else to tell you. You traipse about, you mess up some tanks, you mess up some helicopters.
Everything I've seen is pretty hard to make a Godzilla game that kind of keeps your attention, because it's just, you either make a fighter or you just like Street Fighter 2 fight between two kaiju, or you have a little thing where you have a mission to walk from this spot to that spot and blow up stuff. And
now it is a PS3 game. It came out on the PS3, and it also got released on the PS4. As far as I'm aware, the PS4 version has some extra content, but they're largely the same game. The controls are what you call tank controls.
Yeah.
Remember how in Resident Evil you'd have to like walk, turn. It's totally that.
yeah.
When you're controlling Godzilla, you have to use the shoulder buttons to make him turn.
It's like driving a bobcat.
It's very interesting. It's very cumbersome, but I think it's fitting for Godzilla.
Yeah.
Because Godzilla's never really been agile.
Yeah. That's my problem with the last couple American movies.
Yeah.
They have him running around.
Yeah.
It's like he's supposed to be a big lumbering monster, and he doesn't dodge missiles because he doesn't have to.
And when you start playing, when you go into the level, it gives you an objective. Go destroy this thing. Yeah. And then they'll send I fought Mechagodzilla. They sent Mechagodzilla in, and I had to destroy Mechagodzilla.
Yeah.
They'll have achievements that you can get while you're playing. One of the ones I did was destroy 8 helicopters. And so I just used the atomic breath to destroy one helicopter at a time, 8 times.
I don't know. It would probably take some investment. I'm sure there's not a screaming demand for it to maybe do something more like No Man's Land, or I was kind of thinking more of like one of the Star Wars games, the Battlefront games, where you could just kind of move between places and do kind of whatever you wanted to do. Maybe that would be the thing you do in a Godzilla, where you could go around the Earth and fight different monsters or attack different places, and then go to Planet X and duke it out with Ghidorah.
I could see how that could be a really large scope game.
That'd probably be the only way to make that more interesting than what they've already tried. And I don't even know how many Godzilla games they've made at this point, but it's
Godzilla Destroy the World.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things I noticed while I was playing is narratively, your motivation as Godzilla is to eat. That's the whole reason you're doing what you're doing. You're destroying power reactors, which has energy that you eat.
Yeah.
Now, that's the first time. Again, I'm not really deep into Godzilla lore, so I don't know. I've never really heard of Godzilla having a motivation, but there's definitely a motivation in this. You gotta eat.
When usually he's a bad guy in those movies, he's coming to shore to a nuclear plant to absorb radiation, kind of thing. When he's in some of the other movies, he's just hanging out on Monster Island, doesn't need to. So that's an inconsistency through the through the world. But
and this is the first time I ever heard about Godzilla eating. Like, they actually say he has to eat. Like, it's something that's what sustains him.
Yeah.
Now, the idea of him absorbing radiation makes sense because he's a big radioactive monster, but I never thought about him actually sustaining on radiation. Like, maybe he doesn't need to eat anything else. He just eats radiation.
Probably
Is there any Godzilla film that shows him eating anything?
No, I mean they do that, and there's several times where he does come to shore, comes to like a nuclear plant, and is kind of breaks into the top and is just absorbing radiation.
It goes into his mouth or something.
Just stands there and
just
it blows
stands there.
up into him. But yeah, that's typically not going on in most Godzilla movies. That's probably them trying to find an objective in the video game.
Absolutely,
something to do.
I just from my perspective, it was an interesting aspect of the game that I thought kind of explained a little bit more about Godzilla.
The most interesting thing I've ever seen, and that was not in the Japanese, that was in that 2014 movie, was that the Muto, the monster that he fought in there, that was a male and a female, they were trying to get together and lay a bunch of eggs, which would have supposedly just taken out the Earth. Is that they were trying to feed off of him. I think they kind of hinted like there had been another Godzilla that those things had probably killed years ago. And as they go around, they're eating nuclear subs, and they're chasing down energy, having to eat it all the time because they're getting ready to mate and have kids, and they needed that energy to be able to do that.
So eating energy is kind of a theme in the series.
Yeah, okay. It can be.
You could read a lot into that.
Yeah. Gives you somewhere to go, I guess, if they don't have anywhere else to go. Most of the other movies have got plenty of places to go. They don't have to try to squeak that in. But
with the time I spent with the game, I don't think it's as offensive as other people have said in the past. I remember people being really critical of the game when it came out, saying it wasn't very good.
Yeah.
It's from what I played, and like I said, I only played a couple of levels. It's fine. It's what I would expect from a Godzilla game. It's not necessarily anything to write home about, but if you just want to spend some time busting up some helicopters and some buildings.
I think that's every Godzilla game I've played.
Yeah.
I played a couple levels and been like, okay, that was kind of fun, but I'm going to do something else now.
Yeah, exactly. I can't see, me personally, I can't see me going through the entire game, but I can see playing it, a couple of times, having a good time, but wearing its welcome, I guess, is something that could actually actually come across. All right.
Yeah, I guess on the still watching front, I am working steadily through Bleach. Won't stay on that for very long. I've still got a ways to go. Getting into the arc where they are battling with like blunts, and it's just there. Took me a minute to kind of figure out just basically vampires and that feed off of. It's supposed to be feeding off of the souls of, I think maybe people that are already dying, and they start breaking the rules and start feeding on people that there's nothing wrong with. So
they actually like drink their blood, or is it like a life force?
It's not really blood. It's sort of like they bite them on the neck and absorb their life force or their souls or something. But
what's Bleach rated?
I'm sure it's probably a 14. It's not
that could be the whole reason, because I know Japanese media, they kind of stay away from gore generally.
There's a fair amount of gore. There's a lot of like sword fighting that gets, especially for the time at least when this first got started. It was the early 2000s, I think. Get pretty bloody. But and there's the not over the top fan service in that one, but enough of it that I would think it would probably get you a 14 rating at least. But and I think the themes in it too are kind of
TV 14.
Yeah, they get a little. They kind of go back and forth between being goofy to pretty frightening for the time, I guess, or I guess maybe for the age group that's watching it. So, but yeah, I don't know if I'll be able to get all the way through that by the end of this year or maybe next year.
Where are you in the series?
I think I'm maybe in the 80s or 90s on the episodes.
All right, good luck.
I turn it on and start doing other stuff and get through sometimes 4 or 5 episodes at a time. And
do you ever catch yourself having to like go back? Wait, what's going on?
It's weird. I can sit there and watch them while I'm doing other stuff and watch them just fine. If I come over here and sit down on the couch and do it, turn one on, like 10 minutes into it, I'm out. And I have to go back and watch those just to make sure it's not something. A lot of, like we talked about that before, there's a lot of things in the story that have nothing to do with the story. They're just filler. And then there's these little moments of things that do advance the storyline. So you have to go back and watch. Most of the times I've fallen asleep, it's because I was watching a filler and it wasn't very interesting. We still go back just to make sure, and most of the time I'm not missing anything. But I like to be thorough.
Well, I don't know how thorough one can be with a series that has that many episodes. You get halfway through, you forget what happened in the beginning.
Yeah, no, there's nothing that's like so important to the storyline. I think at this point that I think it's literally one of those things you could pick up at any point and start watching and probably enjoy it. There'd be a few things you'd be sort of raising an eyebrow, like what are they talking about or what's going on? But
now, have you ever watched it all the way through?
No.
Okay.
No. I'm just watching it, as I said before, is one of my son's favorites. And they have a newer series that I like to watch too, but I want to get through this just to have that background there before I get into the new one.
Yeah, I like to put series on, like you were saying, just go to any episode. Series that I've seen.
Yeah.
I'll just put a random episode on and
that's the Last Airbender for me. That's a topic for another time, but that's
Seinfeld for me.
I can turn on a Last Airbender, and the bad thing with that is if I watch one, I want to watch more.
Right.
So, but yeah.
Another one of my appetizers is it's called Deadly Tales of Gunslinger. Now this is a comic I picked up last time. It was one of the things I was looking forward to.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's not an anthology series. That's what I was hoping. I was hoping like each comic, each issue would have a new tale of a new gunslinger in the Old West that got the Spawn powers. No, it's one guy. He's called the Gunslinger.
Okay.
Now I don't know if this has any, because the Spawn cowboy has been around since the 90s. The Spawn looking cowboy. I don't know if this is the same character. Didn't look anything up, but this character has an origin.
Seems like they might be tiptoeing into some copyright issues.
It might.
Calling it the Gunslinger.
Yeah, that's they call him. They call the character. His name is the Gunslinger, and it's good. I mean, I'm enjoying it. Like I said, I was kind of let down that it wasn't an anthology series. Similar to that, what I like about anime and shows, I like it when stuff is just concise.
I don't know if you ever saw it or not. I've got it upstairs. When the Matrix stuff was coming out, and could probably get into that might be the fumbled series episode of the podcast, but after the first movie, they made the Animatrix with those little anthology
Loved it.
cartoons.
Yeah.
All of those
That's my favorite Matrix media.
Freaking amazing, all of them. They, at the same time, did a couple of trade comics that were the same thing. There were more of those stories that they didn't do in that, and I guess maybe ones that they drew those animated ones from.
Okay.
And I've read that to the point that it's starting to break the spine.
Oh no!
And I'm afraid to get it out and read it again. But
that's when you'd get it digitally somewhere.
Yeah. But it's the same way. I love those kind of, here's a little short idea story that we had inside this world, and just enjoy it for what it is. It's not going to be something you'll probably think about 5 minutes after, but it's just something. It's a cool way to kind of explore the media, and I think it's one of those things that's maybe lost on some of this new stuff that happens too, is because people don't seem to do that as much anymore. Doing that kind of stuff makes you, I think, a better writer in your own world that you're writing. If you explore all these different ideas, even if you never use them, it just helps you kind of flesh out the whole world surrounding your character, or the whole idea of the Matrix, what we saw in the movie, just imagining that in every facet and every corner of the world.
Yep.
Just something like that just makes you, I think you write better material if you have that kind of a grasp on everything that you're creating, instead of, here's my little 5-minute story about this dude.
And it helps the viewer, reader, whoever, immerse themselves in the world. Because you get, like you're saying, you get the little stories from each corner of the world, and it builds it into a larger cohesive whole.
Yeah.
And this comic, like I said, I was kind of hoping that's what this would be, but it's just the story of the Gunslinger, and the writing style, the art style is great. The writing style is great. I'm enjoying the narrative so far. They're not beyond that. They really lean into screwing this guy over. He's and I think that's really a Spawn thing. Like,
well, it's a Western thing.
It's a both Western and Spawn thing.
Every Western story is a revenge story.
Right.
Every good one is.
the 2 issues I've read of the Gunslinger, and there's a third one out, I haven't read it yet. you pretty much every time it seems like he's getting a little ahead, someone comes along to just smack him down.
Yeah.
So, and that's how you build really good characters.
Yeah.
So I am looking forward to seeing what they eventually do with this character. He is a good character. You are kind of rooting for him. But like I said, it's not what I was looking for. I'm going to hang on for now. We'll see how long I last.
So have they burned down his barn, killed his dog, or stolen his Bible?
No, none of those yet. Stole his younger sister though.
Well, there you
go. That'll do it.
That's the classic Western.
Yeah, definitely.
You killed my dog and you took my Bible.
And Westerns do intrigue me in every media beside film.
Yeah.
I don't like Western movies for some reason, but like every Western video game I've played is great. I've read some like cyberpunk or I guess steampunk novelization kind of things. I like Western. Western's cool. In comic books and manga.
If you've enjoyed a samurai movie, if you've enjoyed John Wick, if you've enjoyed any of those, you've enjoyed a Western.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. Like maybe it's because most Westerns that were made, they were made like in the 60s and 70s, and so you have that older film style.
Oh
that kind of that doesn't really entice me much.
What was it? I don't remember what the series. I won't go into that. There's something about there was like a point in television with Westerns and stuff to where you could not show me shooting you.
Really?
I had to I had to be like me shoot, and then I had to like flip to you going, oh. Like we couldn't be in the same screen at the same time. So,
I could see that. Standards have changed over the years.
Yeah.
I could totally see that being the standard
having it
back
to be
in
where
the 50s or 60s.
You couldn't go past a certain sort of threshold, and those stories limits how good the story could be. And you compare that to Clint Eastwood and Unforgiving, walking into a bar full of people and all of them having that oh crap look on their face because he's drinking again. He's there to kill all of them, and you're like, this is going to be awesome.
There are a few Westerns like Young Guns, the Quick and the Dead, Maverick. I mean, so okay, I'm going. There are some Westerns. I mean, it's just the older Westerns, I guess, and that might be exactly it. I didn't know about the threshold, but maybe that turned me off.
It's still one of my probably top 5 moments in movie history is when they're coming back and telling Clint Eastwood about them killing Morgan Freeman and in Unforgiven. And like his whole thing is he can't be the man that he used to be because he was a drunk when he did all that, and he's just kind of in the background of the shot, and you just see him like he gets a bottle of whiskey and like pops it and he just starts drinking it, and you're just like, oh, it's like it's getting ready to go down. And from there, that movie just shifts gears, and he becomes the guy that he tried to warn everybody that he used to be. And I love that movie. I love that whole scene. Just that you didn't have to say anything. You know, the guy's just sitting there telling the story. This happened, and this happened. You see Clint Eastwood in the background, just like look at a bottle and start drinking it, and you're like, yeah, it's like this is gonna be good.
All right.
And so you're reading that. I'm on my comics. You got that picture there. Let me pull up the actual. This is the actual thing. This is the hard. Wait, is that up here?
There you go.
They get it up there in the shot.
Yeah.
That is the collection of them. With the original work there. Again, I'm kind of taking my time through this, but it's really cool. I don't have the background in Marvel Comics to probably appreciate everything that I'm getting into. We talked about like Dum Dum Dugan being in it.
Yeah, right here.
Yeah.
He's huge.
The other characters
no, Godzilla's small. You told me that.
Yeah, I haven't gotten to that part yet. I think I'm 6 in. So, the other guys that kind of come in all come from. I did a little bit of research. They come back from the Sergeant Fury comics, where the Howling Commandos were all hunting Nazis. Mm-hmm. So you've got Dum Dum Dugan. You got Gabe Jones. I think he's been in other series stuff too. And then Jimmy Woo, there was like a secret agent that I know he showed up in the Ant-Man stuff. No. I think it's that guy.
Okay.
But Jimmy Woo is like that kind of goofy FBI agent in Ant-Man and Wasp.
Yeah.
But I think in this time frame, he's a secret agent. They have Black Widow, who's the secret Russian agent, and Jimmy Woo, I guess, was basically a secret Chinese agent, because this whole thing is taking place in post-World War II. Still trying to hunt down Nazis, trying to stop communism. So in that whole world, and I honestly think if Marvel ever really wanted to get back on track, that would be what they would do, is just go back and tell everything from a historical standpoint and stop trying to modernize it, because this stuff is way more interesting, I think. But yeah, you've got the early Shield guys, and there's groups too. I think they might have done some comics on. There's the Champions, which maybe they did a series. I don't know. The Champions are
Sounds familiar.
It's Iceman, Angel from the X-Men, Black Widow, and then Hercules, like the actual Hercules.
Yeah.
The
son of Zeus.
And the other parts of that team that haven't showed up yet, I don't know if they will later, are Ghost Rider and Darkstar, who's like another Russian, sort of like, probably like a Captain Marvel from Russia kind of thing. And they're just getting into where they're using Stark Industries through one of the Japanese like engineers, or like weapons engineer. They're making Red Ronin, that is a super robot, which is kind of a popular thing in the 70s, and that's really getting all the way back, making the circle complete there. The Shogun Warriors Godzilla, that whole toy line came out of that whole thing out of Japan, where, what's it, Mazinger?
I know it as Mazinger.
There was another big red one. I can't remember what his name was. That was a really popular thing. They had these like super kaiju-sized robots back in the 70s in Japan, and that's what led to that line of the Shogun Warriors toys that got me into Godzilla. And that's where this whole arc is kind of going. I was wondering, just watching it, because I hadn't read it yet, if they were shrinking and making gigantic size the regular characters, but the Red Ronin is actually this giant like Shogun robot that's gonna have like a heat sword that can cut through anything. They actually showed like the design of him and stuff, and how he's got I think it's almost like a giant Gatling gun for an arm. So I haven't got into seeing, I think it may be in the next episode or next issue, where he's gonna fight Godzilla for the first time. And it's like, the whole idea is that you, almost like in Pacific Rim, where you put like a headset on and you melt, or you mold with the intelligence of the robot. There's like the guy that designed it, his grandson has gotten into the machine, and it recognizes his brain, so now the grandson is the only guy that can operate the robot. So it's just a really fun story, and it's kind of silly, but I mean, all superhero stuff is, honestly,
of course,
if you think about it,
at a certain level, yeah.
And if Marvel wanted to resurrect something, I mean, good Lord, you've got 27 issues here that would make a pretty amazing movie or series.
The last time I was at a comic store, I noticed that IDW apparently has the rights to Godzilla now.
I think most of the stuff that I've had, modern stuff, has been. I've collected a lot of it and not read very much of it. That might be just a different show too. There's a Godzilla in Hell series that is, if it's not made into a film before I leave this earth, then I'm going to be disappointed, because it would be an amazing film, and you wouldn't have to have anything, but it's basically Godzilla dies, and it's an anthology too. It's not one continuous thing. It's different writers, different series.
I like the art.
The artwork's amazing, but it's all the other animals that he's defeated and killed are in hell, and they come after him in different forms, and it's one of those things. There's no conversation. There's no text.
Like, what if Batman got put in Arkham? That kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like, it's not just that. It's like Ghidorah or Rodan. It's like, I think Rodan, or one of the characters, I can't remember which one, is like thousands and thousands of like sort of demon bats that form them. So just the creativity in it's crazy. But
no, what I saw at the comic shop were two series that both had issue 1, and I kind of thought it was weird to start two separate Godzilla series at the same time. You would think I would think you'd want to stagger them. And they also had a Godzilla one-shot that I almost got you, called Godzilla versus Chicago. And apparently they're doing like because there's another one that's like Godzilla versus San Francisco or LA or something.
I think I've got it on the wall over there. I've got it pinned up there, so I'm not gonna go get it. That's
Barkley.
Godzilla versus Charles Barkley.
Oh, nice.
It's a one shot. I bought it, never even opened it, because I don't want to spoil it. Just the idea of him on the cover.
Charles Barkley.
I put it up on the wall and I've never looked at it. But Charles Barkley's like blocking the atomic ray with like a giant basketball.
I flipped through the Godzilla versus Chicago. I wasn't, and this is my 22nd perusal review of it. I wasn't impressed with the art. The the panels seemed kind of boring. They didn't seem to have a lot of Godzilla in it.
I think I told you about when I was my last kind of foray into our comic shop here in Roanoke, was that I had asked them to pull some stuff. And they were pulling Star Wars stuff for Dark Times. And I came back and had this stack of all this like stuff, and I'm like, "What on earth is all this?" And I was like, "Well, these are all these other Dark Horse Star Wars things they turned out." And I'm like, "Why?"
That same comic shop that you're talking about offered me a Rogue Savage Lands issue 1 because I got that last time.
Yeah.
Variant cover. I went, no, I'm not getting into that.
Yeah.
I'm not doing variant covers.
I guess that's what
that bit me once before. I'm not doing it again.
What kind of turned me off to collecting a lot of it was just that they're just throwing crap at you, and it's like, have some respect for the people that are buying your stuff. Give us something good.
That's a part of what turns me off. That will eventually turn me off of comics. I'll get into a series, and it'll expand to the point to where I feel like it's too much, and I'll just drop everything.
That's why Toho should never let America do anything else with Godzilla again, because you can watch from where that started from 2014 to where it is now and see that we just can't handle making good stories without trying to link it to churning out merchandise, and the story just gets lost completely. And that's they had a chance to learn their lesson in 1998 and kind of did, but then they let Legendary have it again. Kind of going down the same road.
We're a very large group of people.
Yeah.
We're a big consumer base.
I guess it's one of those things when somebody just keeps throwing money at you, at some point you're
eventually
just like,
all right.
Yeah, okay.
But the end of this one shot had almost like a blue tone, like all the color scheme was shades of blue. And it was this story, I don't know if it was supposed to be like an imagination story or whatever, but there was this little girl, and she took some giant girl juice, and she became huge, and she picked up Godzilla and threw him in the ocean. And I was like, that seems juvenile.
Yeah.
That's why I decided not to get it. I didn't think you would enjoy it.
That's why, like I said, they were disgusted with what happened in '98. They didn't respect the material. I don't think anybody here is ever going to really get the whole concept behind him, that he was created very closely after their country was destroyed,
decimated, and
that they watched
both physically and morale wise.
Well, I mean, they listened to their government lie to them and say we're beating these horrible Americans, and we're going to do this for the glory of the emperor. And all of a sudden, it was like, where'd that city go? And then where'd that city go? And I don't think that people are ever going to hold on to the idea that that's why he was created. It was kind of a warning, kind of a metaphor to what happened to them, and just turn him into here's 8-issue comic about him in Chicago doing things it's not what it was intended to do to be.
Well, that goes right into the 1954 Godzilla film that I've watched for the first time ever.
What?
And I told you how I had seen clips and pieces.
Well, here's a question. Yeah. Did you watch one that had Raymond Burr in it, or one that did not?
That's on my notes. King of the Monsters is not the same as the original Godzilla.
Yeah.
I got about 30 minutes into King of the Monsters, like, I didn't know there were Americans in this film. Yeah. And so I had to look it up, and that's when I found out that
they're in one room.
They took Godzilla, and they kind of did what the Americans did to make Power Rangers. They took Godzilla and inserted a bunch of new scenes that they had shot with Americans. Okay.
The first time I saw that, I had no idea because I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And they do the same thing in 1984. There's the Japanese version of the movie, and then there's the movie with the same actor, Raymond Burr, being a reporter, that's inserted over the film. And I guess they did it as an homage to the first one, not trying to be disrespectful or anything, but you go back and watch it now, and it's you watch the Godzilla footage of what's going on with the movie, and then you go to this thing where there's like him and like a couple of admirals or whatever in a room. It's like, oh, look what he's doing over there.
It's an interesting concept to localize a movie in such a way, to where you add whole characters, whole plot lines for your particular audience. I know China kind of does that with like the Marvel films.
Yeah.
Like they'll have characters who are just in China.
Yeah, and they have to. Sometimes they're doing that because they're having to delete something they don't
Delete
want.
another character that China
Yeah.
doesn't want to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is also a part of it.
Yeah,
But the length of the Raymond Burr, the King of the Monsters, and the original 1954 Godzilla is the same.
yeah.
So do you know what were the big changes? Like, did they actually cut stuff out of Godzilla?
Yeah,
Or-
they
I mean, they
had
had
to
to
cut
cut stuff out, but like, what did they cut?
I've never watched them back to back to try to figure out what they cut.
Well,
But
that would be interesting. Now, I didn't for the 20 or 30 minutes that I watched King of the Monsters. I didn't see a lot of the governmental stuff.
there's several pretty long sequences in the first movie, in the original movie, of hospitals with these. I mean, really sad music. I mean, it's wasn't just the movie itself. The music that was made for that movie was amazing.
Yeah, and King of the Monsters does have a bit of that in the
I
beginning.
think it might be where they shortened some of
Shorten
it,
it, yeah.
because they really do sort of, they don't dwell on it. It's not the right word, but they really emphasize this is what the aftermath of what happened to Japan looks like. And
Now, this is an aside. Raymond Burr, I didn't know that was the actor's name, but Raymond Burr's character's name is Steve Martin. And that just made me giggle. I thought that was a missed opportunity to make a comedy at some point.
yeah.
But
As many times I've watched it, I don't know. I could have told you that was his name. I've always, it's like, that's Raymond Burr.
yeah, well, I made a note of it when I heard it. I was like, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
And
Be a different tone of movie if Steve Martin
I'd
showed
love
up
to-
with his banjo and an arrow through his head.
I'd love to see a Godzilla film, kind of in the vein of what was it called? Idiot, the Idiot,
The
with
Jerk.
Steve Martin, the Jerk. Yeah,
The
I'm
Jerk.
sorry. Yeah, the Jerk with Steve Martin. That would be hilarious. That'd be great.
I don't think Toho would go for that
No,
one.
definitely not. That is going way beyond respect. That is
Yeah.
disrespect.
Yeah.
Speaking of the origins of Godzilla, I didn't know that the original Godzilla was a result of the atomic testing at Bikini Atoll. It wasn't. I always thought it was a result of the atomic weapons that were dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima.
It was much more of a controversial thing, sort of worldwide. But, with media being controlled and stuff, it wasn't a thing that people made a big deal of here, because they weren't in the constant state of melting down over everything the government does and screaming disaster on everything that happens like they are right now.
No, I didn't watch enough of King of Monsters. Do you even recall if they mentioned that in King of Monsters at all? Maybe that's one of the things they cut, was like where he came from.
I don't know that answer to that one.
I could totally see Americans being okay with, hey, just a big dinosaur. Yeah, no explanation. Just, hey, there's a big dinosaur came out of the water. All right.
Well, probably in the American version, you don't want to emphasize the fact that we're the one doing all the nuclear stuff.
Yeah.
So it's easier to just be like, hey, Japanese monster, look.
It struck me how in the beginning of the film, at least, before they went on the offensive to try to stop Godzilla, they were very reactionary. It was something that they just had to accept. It was like, well, Godzilla's destroying everything. This is what is happening.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that kind of reflects the attitude of their culture
Oh yeah.
with the atomic weapons.
It's one of the themes that I think was so good in -1 when we get to that was kind of how they still understand the right approach, the historical approach to what the country was like after World War II, knowing that they really were the bad guys, but then kind of got their butts handed to them in a way that was equally bad. But again, it's one of those sort of mind processes that I just don't think. I don't think it is. It's easy to say you understand it. I don't know that you understand it until up until recently. I'm sure you still had a lot of people in Japan that lived through all of that and could understand, could remember being on one side of the mountain.
I remember reading an article a few years ago about a man who survived both.
Yeah,
Like he survived one atomic attack, went to the other city, survived that one too.
you literally be in the town on the other side of the mountain from Hiroshima or Nagasaki and not have any idea what happened, and one day look up and have just the survivors that made it out coming over the mountain melted and walking into your town saying that something blew up and burned the whole city down, and you'd be like, I thought we were winning. So
Now, in the Godzilla movies, the atomic attacks happened, right?
yeah, The
Because I know in -1 we'll talk about that, but in -1, it's in the aftermath of World War II.
yeah, it's all kind of still in that. I don't know that they don't really say that nothing happened or did happen or didn't happen, but it really is kind of focused on the nuclear climate that was going on in the 50s, where I guess especially if somebody like Japan was sitting there watching the U.S. and Russia, which you got to remember that the Soviet Union came up to basically like Florida to Cuba from Japan. You know, I don't know how many miles off the coast it is, but it's not far from Japan into the eastern side of the Soviet Union. That these two guys are having an arms race in your backyard, threatening to blow each other up, and your little island that just got blown up, that's sitting there watching them do it. So probably a feeling of helplessness there that's probably a little bit hard to comprehend.
Yeah, it's almost as if clearly Godzilla is like a manifestation of that whole situation.
Yeah.
It's the result of the testing in the Bikini Atoll in the Godzilla films are Godzilla. When in our world, it was the atomic weapons.
And you're talking about a culture too that really thought the leader of their country was a divine person.
Yeah.
Who they had to watch get marched out onto a boat and sign a treaty with Americans. And they heard him talk for the first time on the radio when he surrendered and stuff, and heard his voice that was weak and kind of fragile sounding. And I guess they all thought it'd be this booming godlike voice. And then they saw the guy, and so it's not just the defeat; it was just the crushing of the entire culture at once.
That really plays into my last point about when Godzilla died. It was very somber, and that struck me. You would think, as an American, hey, the monster's dead, yay, let's all celebrate. But it was like the music, the tone, everything. It was this monster who's just wreaked havoc on our nation is dying, and it seems like we feel bad about it.
Yeah.
And that, speaking of the Emperor, I don't know. I'm sure there have been people who have really dove into all the allegory and all the symbolism in that.
Yeah, it's just, I guess, kind of that sort of idea that we're just sitting here watching the destruction of humankind, and we're just kind of passengers at this point, just watching it careen off the side of the cliff, and the only way that we can even try to curtail it is destroy more things, and it's kind of a bad spot to be in terms of the awareness of your place in the universe.
Yeah.
But
now, just a real quick aside, one of the things I noticed between the maybe 4 or 5 Godzilla films I've seen so far is how he dies differently every time.
Yeah.
That I do find that interesting. Like in the first one, it was deoxygenated water.
The oxygen destroyer.
Yeah. And in Shin Godzilla, that was different. I watched Shin Godzilla as well. And this is a figure. Tell us about this figure.
I'll get this away. This was 2023 G-Fest, the first time I went to the Godzilla Fest, where they have for sale these first-time viewings of these super collectible, low-run figures. And some of them on the table, so I got pictures of all of them. And I guess there are vendors that come over from Japan with them. There were literally some figures of Ghidorah and Godzilla that were as big as the little Japanese lady that was standing behind the table. This one was probably,
a good 12, 14, 16 inches.
It was probably more pushing 3 feet, maybe definitely over 2 feet tall. I have that on my phone, and I was telling you earlier, every time I scroll through pictures on my phone and see that remains maybe one of my top 5 regrets over the last 5 years, that I did not buy that figure. It was the way you could see the light and stuff through the little opaque parts when you backlit that figure was just ridiculous. And Shin Godzilla and Godzilla -1 are probably neck and neck for me on the best 2 designs I've ever seen for Godzilla. I would have easily said Shin was my number 1 until -1, and -1 was a really cool design too, but probably still I kind of give that race by a neck to Shin Godzilla. Just it starts off as a little legless lizard
tadpole
thing coming ashore, and it just rapidly evolves because of radiation, and just keeps evolving. And by the time he gets to where his mouth is splitting and open up, and he's blowing out hyper purple nuclear heat that I'm just sitting there watching that in the theater like, oh my gosh, it's like, this is amazing. But I'm gonna go to the grave regretting not buying that figure. That's
Do you look it up every now and again just to see?
Nope. It was very expensive. It was. I was talking with my son about this the other day. I think that was $200 to $300. It might have been $350, something like that, because it was a very limited run thing.
Mm-hmm.
And of course they were. I was sitting there watching people come out of the room carrying these boxes like this, because I guess guys go to that show every year, buy those things up, and probably take them back and either resell them or make them part of a collection. But I don't want to know what it sells for now.
There are a few collectibles that I've got like on my eBay watch list, and anytime someone puts it up, it just dings me. Yeah. And it's gotten to the point to where I open up my eBay app, look at the price, and go, huh, and close it, because I'm like, I'm never buying this thing.
I've never been to a G Fest, and there were guys that were like, when they say they were going to like open the vendor or that room, where it wasn't even a vendor room, it was just a room for these figures.
Wow.
It's like when they were in that room, there were guys that were like, speed walking down there trying to get there and get first in line. And I was like, yeah, we'll go check that out in a little while. So, Martha and I just went down and kind of went through it. It's like, wow, these are awesome. They had unpainted guys that were huge, so you could actually paint them the way you wanted to, and figures from different movies and stuff like that. Actually have busts that looked like a deer mount, like if you kill a deer and mounted the head. They had busts of all the different ones for each head. And that may be what I do, is I just start setting money aside, and next time I go to G Fest, if they still sell something like that, I'm just going to have a wall of Godzilla heads or something.
Now, I did enjoy the Shin Godzilla design.
Yes.
Like you said, with the evolutionary aspect, I thought that was great.
Yeah, like he gets to a point where it's like, he almost looks like he's just grown too fast to even stand up. And he's like all lanky, and his arms are kind of weird, but it like just keeps filling in as it goes. And I
like how his eyes in the beginning looked like fish eyes.
Yeah.
They weren't very expressive at all.
Yeah.
I was assuming as I was watching it that was just, this is this Godzilla's design, but once he becomes bipedal, his eyes do become more expressive.
Yeah.
I thought that was an interesting creative choice.
I think there's more thought that goes into some of these things in terms of like actual history and actual biology and things like that than most people probably realize, because just Japanese writers are on a level that we don't do things on. And they'll go into a crazy detail like that, probably just to satisfy themselves, so that they feel like they did their job completely. Where somebody else here, like, yeah, we're not going to do that because that doesn't matter.
Right.
And
well, you see that in anime, like with how they animate food.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Or watch somebody at a railroad crossing in Japan in an anime, and how much detail and the sounds and everything. It's like, you didn't have to do all that.
I've seen side by side where they'll show a shot in an anime and then like the actual photograph.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of look at it for a second. Okay, which one's the photo?
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely a certain amount of care.
Yeah.
That I think is unique.
But the way he keeps progressing, and by the time he gets to the point where he's shooting
lasers all over the place.
Lasers out of his spine and his tail.
Is this the only Godzilla that shoots lasers out of the spine?
Yeah.
That was wild.
There's the Singular Point show, which is not really part of any of, it's not even tied to Toho. That was just a Netflix thing that they, I guess, got permission to do. I think in there they start probably kind of taking off of that, where they're doing different energy shots that he does, because he's evolving all the way through from like this almost sort of like a sea beast to walking around Godzilla to like this like really hyper large Godzilla. And every time he does in that series, he's shooting out different kinds of energy things and stuff. And kind of a cool idea, but it's not even tied to this.
Is that an animated series?
Animated series on Netflix.
Huh, okay.
That you never know with them. It's like Shin Godzilla, where they kind of open the door to do other things with that same property if somebody wants to. And I don't know that I've ever heard that they have any intention of doing anything with Singular Point beyond that. Or I don't think they're ever going to really follow up Shin Godzilla either. But
do you remember in Shin Godzilla when they finally hurt him for the first time? They bombed him and like his back bled real bad, and there was just like all this blood that fell down.
Yeah.
Apparently there was a deleted scene. Do you know about this?
No. I don't think so.
Okay, there's a deleted scene. I will show it to you. I'll show you the actual scene later, where they're looking at the wreckage of the city, and they find just these massive like piles of goo, like just coagulated blood that have teeth and eyeballs. And it was a part of the whole evolutionary aspect of Shin Godzilla,
Yeah.
where he's not really, and it seems like they cut most of this kind of stuff out, where Godzilla isn't necessarily a singular creature. It's more like a force of nature. And Godzilla spreads almost like a virus.
Yeah.
And that his blood actually started to evolve. So they would, from what I was reading, the idea was that the blood would actually coagulate and turn into another Godzilla.
Yeah.
But they cut
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and that's probably getting away from kind of the original story idea of Godzilla.
Oh, yeah.
I think that was
Oh,
the director.
absolutely.
And I don't know how directly they ever kind of go back and forth with Toho with their storylines and stuff, and if Toho sees something and they're like, nah, you're not doing that. But I think that's at least possible over there.
Well, that was stuff that they filmed. And then they also had, what they kept in the film was the very last shot of Godzilla was his tail.
Yeah.
And you saw the humanoid figures coming off of it.
Yeah, and I think that was that thing that was there that we'll throw this idea out to you guys. If you guys want to expand on this, then here's something you could do to continue this. And I don't know that the Toho bit on that one, but the whole idea was that those guys would be almost sort of like a, not legion's the right word, but like a
Hive mind.
hive mind. There would be figures or creatures that would spawn off of him, almost be more human-like, but they would still be connected to the main creature. Is my understanding of how they were going to do that.
That seems to be how the content that is rumored to have been cut.
Yeah.
Because the wild speculation says that he was at one point after these humanoids came off, he was going to like gain the ability to fly, and then he was going to go out in space and become like his own planet, and then become a galaxy. Like he was going to keep evolving until he was making his own life forms, kind of like the things that were coming off his tail.
Yeah.
Where Godzilla would have become almost like a literal god.
That would definitely have to be in its own universe. But
Yeah,
it's a shame that they didn't, and I guess are not going to explore that, because that's very creative and would be something where you could have an ongoing set of characters, that were Dr. So-and-so that's going to be the one who's always chasing this down and trying to figure out how to stop it.
I mean, give me a sci-fi series in the vein of Macross where they're fighting Space Godzilla. Yeah, give me that.
Yeah,
Please.
yeah. All of a sudden we have to take our decommissioned military and turn it into a force of giant mechs that have to go into space.
One thing that did strike me between the few Godzilla things that I've watched over the past few weeks is the allegorical nature of Godzilla. And Shin Godzilla, I think, just took that even further.
Yeah.
I really felt like the Godzilla in Shin Godzilla was more of a commentary, like it was more of a commentary about maybe socialism than the atomic weapons themselves and the dangers of like the hive mind and stuff like that.
It's interesting when different people watch that movie too. I guess because that movie came out in 2016. We were in Japan in 2014. So I was been there pretty recently and was still kind of awestruck at how polite and orderly and clean and everything about that society was. So I guess I was paying more attention to it from that standpoint. That movie was as stark of a criticism of their government that I've ever seen, because they don't
for the first quarter of the movie, their government didn't do anything. They were just stalled.
Yeah, like
they didn't know what to do.
They couldn't ever get out of committee without having another committee to figure out how to get to the next committee. And that doesn't seem like that much of a criticism from our standpoint, but
we're used to that.
That's a culture. Yeah, good Lord, don't get me started on that. That's a culture that doesn't openly complain about the government and complain about a lot of things. They do their jobs. They take pride in what they do. It's all about trying to put the best version of what you're doing out there for everybody, and not because you want to impress somebody. It's that you should be trying to impress yourself with your effort. And that was what stuck with me out of that movie, was that it was pretty harsh Japanese criticism of the government. It really, really was just mocking them. And I was like, wow, I'm surprised that there aren't some people almost in trouble for this movie.
There was one scene in particular that really drove that point home. Is after, I think it was the first city that Godzilla went to and destroyed. The officials came out and looked at the wreckage, and they were like, I can't believe this destruction that Godzilla caused. And one dude was like, Godzilla didn't cause it, we caused it by our inaction.
Yeah.
Like, they were like, if you don't understand what we're saying, this is what we're saying.
And 2016 too, you are 4, maybe 5 years. I forget if it was 2011 or 12. I think it was 12, where they had the tsunami that pretty much wiped out
Fukushima? That what it was?
No, that was, you're talking about the nuclear plant.
Yeah.
No, this was the one that, like, it was just a huge tsunami in the.
Oh, I thought the
Philippines.
tsunami caused the nuclear plant to.
I don't know if it's. I think it might be two different things.
It might be.
But this was like the one that, like, I mean, it flooded basically every seaside town, destroyed. Our introduction into that, or connection to that, was the year that our kids went to Hawaii playing Pokemon competitively. And that year there had been no tournaments because everything in Japan was destroyed. So they had, I think that was 2011.
2011.
The so where they had all these things where people would qualify all year. Everybody in Japan that played Pokemon had to come to, like, their last chance qualifier tournament that happened the day before the tournament, trying to get in because nobody had a chance to play in any events. So they hadn't qualified anybody. And there were all these people that were still trying to play their favorite Pokemon game in light of the fact that their homes had been destroyed, and weren't able to talk with a lot of people there because there were a lot of only Japanese speaking competitors there. But I just remember paying more attention to the tsunami stuff back then because of being at that event. And
well, I could see it again. They wrap allegory up in Godzilla quite a bit.
Yeah, and that movie's criticism might have been a lingering. This is our first chance to get a shot back at the government for the way everything happened then.
Now, I did like how the Americans were portrayed in this. I really liked the Kyoko, the American consulate for the president.
It's been a little while since I've seen Shin. I don't remember.
They presented Americans as cocksure, competent, and decisive. That's how they presented us. Yeah. It kind of reminded me of that meme that says, "Be the American Japan thinks you are." You know.
That's not thinking of. Gosh, what was the movie? Was it 2000 or was it Biollante? There was kind of a controversy there where he steps on and kills some American soldiers.
Oh, okay.
And
people read into that.
People read into that they didn't think that was proper and it was offensive and stuff. And there's some, when you get back into the original, into the Showa era stuff, the pre-1975 stuff, there's several stories that have American guys, and they are always these, probably not meant to be, but they're kind of like goofy, always want to say like a 70s Batman kind of character, where they're just, and maybe that's just how all of our actors were, or at least the ones that are available for Godzilla movies were. But yeah, that hasn't always been a thing for Americans to be really
portrayed well.
Yeah.
And I don't know why this was put in the film, other than maybe just to build the character out a little bit. I did like how Kyoko, at the end they were talking about how she wanted to be president, like she had aspirations to become president, and I thought that was an interesting thing for a Japanese movie to add to their film.
I was trying to think of 2016, what you would have had going on there.
Hillary.
Yeah.
That could have been that. That could have been a nod to that.
Could have been.
I did want to mention that this is available on archive.org. I didn't know. I was looking for where I could watch Shin Godzilla.
Yeah.
And I found it on archive.org, and there's all sorts of stuff on archive.org that I had no idea. It's almost like a Netflix that's free, but it has a bunch of movies that you wouldn't be able to find on Netflix or YouTube for one reason or another. I told you I watched the 1994 Fantastic Four film on that. Yeah. So that is a place I've been going to see what they have.
I haven't ventured there because I'm scared to death of anything that you have to go through a site that's not an official looking site, and I'm afraid I'm going to download some kind of like Russian worm or something.
Well, I've used archive.org for years for like the Wayback Machine. So the website itself is reputable, but I did tell you this the other day, they do have torrents on there, which I'm not going to mess with. I'm not going to mess with torrents. If it's a video file, like an MP4 or something, sure, I'll stream it, no problem. And it's like Wikipedia to where they rely on like, not subscription, but they rely on donation revenue.
Okay.
So they're not doing ads or anything like that. Once they start relying on ads, then you get the whole malware possibility.
Yeah.
Like with some anime streaming sites and stuff like that. Just stay away from all that. But my experience with archive.org, it has been fine. That's anecdotal.
Cool.
That's
cool if it's a way that you can find some stuff I have a list of stuff that I can't find anywhere. So yeah. I'm probably going to get on there and at least look around a little bit. I might be too chicken to click on anything. But...
Well, if from what I found is there's two ways you can really watch something if it's on there. Is you can watch a streaming version of whatever video file they have, or they'll give you files you can download.
Yeah.
So I've just been doing the streaming.
That's what I would probably do is stream it.
Once you start downloading stuff onto your local system, no, that's a little risky for me.
Yeah, no. I don't think I want to take that chance.
No. Well, that's all for our appetizers.
Yes.
Okay, and we're going to go into our main course. And what we have for our main course is biscuits from a local biscuit shop. And I've never eaten there before. Have you ever eaten here at that place before?
Do you remember what it's called?
What it was called? I don't. My phone is recording us.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it's called. It was just
a
local biscuit place. I don't think either of us had ever.
That's not the place we went for breakfast, like the brunch.
No.
Okay.
No,
that's the only thing I was thinking, but no, I have not.
Yeah, this is over by the Grandin Theater.
Oh, okay.
But I got a hot honey chicken biscuit, and you got a fried bologna biscuit.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I mean, we're a couple of southern men. We love biscuits.
And I was scrolling through the menu when you sent it to me. You said you're going to make an order, and I don't think I saw. Literally, like if you can imagine all the different names of sandwiches written out, there was just like this one glowing thing that said bologna.
Bologna.
So I don't even remember what the other options were. I was like, get me the bologna one.
All right. Well, we'll be back to talk about our biscuits and Godzilla -1.
There we go.
Well, what'd you think, Joel?
I'm gonna say, where's the defibrillator? Hook it up to me, so when I have a heart attack halfway through this next bit, I'll just keep going.
That was ridiculous. I wasn't expecting them to be as thick as they were. I had the chicken patty, and the thing was like 4 inches thick.
We might have to rethink how we do this.
Yeah, you kind of need a nap at this point.
I need a nap. I'm not 100% doing like the no carbs thing, but most of our diet is that. That's more bread in 30 minutes than I've probably had in the last month and a half. So I may very well
crash.
Something might happen to me here soon. I'm not complaining. If I die that way, I'm good with that. I died at the hands of a bologna sandwich.
Yeah.
There's nothing more Appalachian than that.
Well, when I was putting in the order, I saw that they had a bunch of sides. They had hash browns, sausage, toast, stuff like that. And I was like, I don't know. Maybe we could use a side. I'm glad I didn't get any sides.
Hash browns would have been awesome. I don't know how in the world. No. I would have had to reposition the camera and just lay on the floor for the rest of the podcast and just drop stuff in our mouth and blah.
If we had gotten the sides, we should just get sides. Yeah, some hash browns, some sausage or something. A biscuit and sides.
No, the rest of the show would be in us in different clothes because it'd be like 2 days later.
Yeah, 2 days.
We awoke from our coma and resumed talking about Godzilla.
That was great. I will go there again.
Scratch Biscuit Company.
Is that what's called? Scratch Biscuit Company. Yeah. It's good. It's good.
Yeah.
Speaking of good, Godzilla -1.
Yeah, I don't really have any hesitation in saying. I guess you have to always put the first movie in a franchise as the watermark. I guess
the definitive version.
And 1984 was huge for me because it kind of was my first Godzilla thing. But I still I still have a difficult time arguing that -1 is not the best thing they've ever done. It's on so many levels. It's just an amazing movie, and I guess the place to start with it is just burn through the story real quick, because I don't know if you haven't seen it. I think we decided during the Dan to Dan episode that anything we're talking about we're going to spoil.
Yeah,
So,
spoiler.
basic premise is this is post World War II Japan, so it's a period piece, probably early 50s. Probably, if you want to get technical, if it's supposed to be, the first movie happened in 54, this is -1, so this is probably in 53. I don't know if there's dates in the movie. I don't recall ever noting that.
I don't recall specific dates.
But at any rate, the main part of the story takes place there, but it starts off at the end of the war with a pilot that is flying to an island. He's a kamikaze pilot. It's in the last days of the war. Basically already a lost cause. Most people already know that at this point. I don't know that they even reference whether or not, I don't think any of the bombs have happened, but it's got to be close to that.
And that's kind of one of the things about the themes of Godzilla. I'm not sure if maybe Godzilla is supposed to be like instead of the bombs.
One of the things about the whole Japanese war theater is you're talking from Japan down to Australia through the Philippines, all of the islands in the Pacific. So, and there was no internet. There was no, your communication was letters and stuff sent back and forth. So there were literally parts that probably didn't find out about the bombs hitting the main island until months later, or that the war was even over.
I remember hearing something at one point. It was like 20 years later, and they finally found this one guy or one platoon, or a group of people who still thought the war was going on.
Yeah. But I'm assuming this is probably in the months, if not weeks, leading up to.
It says 1945 and 1947.
Yeah. So 47 is probably when you come back to him coming home.
Yeah.
But anyway, he flies to an island for repairs, quote unquote, and you find out that he's basically a kamikaze pilot that doesn't want to die.
A cowardly kamikaze pilot.
So he chickens out, goes to an island, says he needs repairs. They quickly see there's nothing wrong with your plane, but the guys are kind of sympathetic to that a little bit, of knowing it's like, we know that it's our plight kind of sucks at this point, and that yours does too. So he stays on the island overnight, and won't get into all the details of it. He starts to see some signs of Godzilla, of something happening. He starts to see fish washing up and stuff like that. But I think that's more not Godzilla coming. That's testing happening out in
radiation
in the Pacific or something. But at any rate, that night this monster appears. He's a guy that lives on the island, sort of a prehistoric thing. It's not Godzilla as we know it. It's bigger than a T-Rex, way smaller than Godzilla, and attacks the mechanics that are stationed on the island. And they have limited kind of ways to fight back. They've got rifles. His plane that he parked there is really the only kind of heavy machine gun they have. And as they see this thing coming towards them, they're like, go get in your plane, and when he comes past it, shoot him. And he sneaks over to his plane, and the monster does exactly what they wanted to do. You had the perfect chance. It leans down, is even kind of looking around into the sights of his machine gun, so he could have, like, point blank just shot this thing in the head and killed it.
It froze up.
Freezes up again. It goes on and goes after the guys there, kills everybody there, except for the sort of lead mechanic. And that lead mechanic is Sosaku Tachibana, is his character name. The pilot is Koichi Shikishima. That's the pilot's name. And it's not the actors, these are the character names in the movies. So he wakes up the next day, he gets knocked out. I think it destroys his plane, some stuff explodes, he gets knocked out. Wakes up the next day to find the Tachibana guy dragging all of the guys that work for him on the island into a line, because they've all been killed by this monster. And he's again kind of hit with you chickened out 2 times here in a row. Yeah. It's like, dude, you suck. And then from there he goes home to, I don't know if does he go back to Tokyo? I think it's at least it's a prefecture of it. Tokyo's huge. It's always been huge. It was even huge back then.
It's just been destroyed. Wherever it was decimated.
Decimated by the firebombing campaign. Everybody talks about the nuclear attacks on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. what happened in Tokyo was far more destructive in terms of loss of life and damage to property. They firebombed with B-29s Tokyo for months, leading up to the plan that they were going to eventually have to invade mainland Japan. So, and you're talking homes that were made of paper and sticks, you know, traditional Japanese homes with the little sliding doors and the paper screens and all that stuff. Just like a matchbook when you start dropping incendiary bombs on it, which we did, and we burnt the city to the ground before we even hit the two main cities with the nuclear bombs. So he comes home for that and finds out that his family died there. So there's kind of just this growing list of things. It's like everything I'm doing is it's failing. You know, I failed my army, failed these mechanics. I've come back home and found out that I failed my family. They're gone. I think his neighbor, you meet his neighbor. She's kind of the little sassy lady. That is Sumiko Oda. That's the little neighbor lady that found out that she lost her children, wasn't it? To the fire bombs, and somehow or another she lived, and kind of get the sense that everybody that's left is just kind of overwhelmed with guilt that they're still alive and everybody else they know is dead, and kind of sets that whole mindset that I was talking about, that we don't really probably fully comprehend the mindset of what was going on over there at that time. And the
all of that the thing that struck me about that narrative, the branch of the movie, is how that could be a movie in and of itself.
Oh yeah,
like the Godzilla narrative, the part of the Godzilla part of the movie is almost like a subplot, it seems like, at least in the beginning.
Yeah, I was looking for his name again because I always forget the guy that wrote and directed this thing. Takeshi Yamazaki. I don't know what kind of research, what his background is, and how, excuse me, how he got to his understanding of the events. He's definitely has some historical interest and has done his research on it, because the world he creates is pretty amazing as far as that goes. And from there, you're introduced to Noriko, which is the eventual love interest, but at the time it's just a girl that he sees
with a kid,
with a baby that she abandons, but she's trying to get away from somebody she's maybe stolen from or something. I forget what the scenario was. They kind of hook back up. He talks to her, finds out that it's not even her kid, it's just another child that was orphaned in the bombings, and she ends up just staying in what's left of his house, which I guess was his parents' house.
There's a lot of themes that came out of that, of making the best with what you have.
Yeah,
you know, it's the family that you are left with after your family's died, and the corner of the house
that's not destroyed. It's just what you're living in, and I think the neighbor gives them rice to the good rice she was saving to. It's like, just use this to make gruel for the baby. Don't eat it yourself.
And I'm sure definitely after the war, there's everywhere after a war, there's that feeling of you make do.
Yeah. And then I guess a little bit of time passes. He
needs some money.
He goes and gets a job with it's like a tugboat crew that is tasked by the government to go out into the seas around Japan and try to remove all the mines that have been left. Some of them left by Americans, some of them left by Japanese. All the naval warfare that went on, or that was some of it that was going to go on, some of it never happened. And you meet the kind of the main other characters there. You get Kenji Noda, who is the kind of little goofy, wild-haired guy with the glasses. He's a weapons engineer. He's kind of in charge of this little team. You get Seiji Akitsu, who is the really tall, kind of goofy comic relief guy. He's the boat captain. And you also get Shiro Muzishima, who is like a little young sailor. He's like the guy that was too young to be a soldier in the war. He hears all these old guys talking about the war and kind of wishes he wants to be like them kind of guys. That's kind of your little core group of guys. And
they really use that group of sailors to instill a lot of heart into the plot.
Yeah.
I really felt like that's what helped the audience connect with the characters. Was that part. It's like probably especially the men. I mean, because a lot of men will watch that and they'll see the friends that they have portrayed in at least one of those characters.
The thing you hear so often about any movie is that these movies that fail all the time are full of characters that you just don't care about. The writers don't give you a reason to, and you get kind of really attached to. You find something to like and kind of reason to attach yourself to everybody that you meet in this movie, which is just another part of the genius of the writing of it, I think. But
I think they did a really good job, and you'll probably get into this, of redeeming the main character.
Oh yeah,
especially through like Noriko.
My notes where I have some notes about the story, I have one word, and it's redemption.
Yeah,
that's the whole. That's the theme of the
I'll
movie.
let you go ahead.
That's the whole theme of the movie. Let's see. That group goes out. They learn that they're just going to go out and basically drag a cable around, try to catch mines, and you exploit them with a machine gun.
Right.
And,
does attach to the back of the little tugboat.
yes. And in doing that, that's the first. Well, I guess it's kind of happening simultaneously. That's when all the testing is happening out in the Pacific with nuclear stuff and the Atoll Islands, Bikini Atoll.
Creating Godzilla.
And you get a little flashback or a little flash side scene of seeing him getting radiated by one of these bombs. So this big monster that was on the island gets hit with nuclear radiation and becomes Godzilla. And it's what I love about, I think we talked about it in Dan to Dan, how they can give you a little couple minute scene and set up all of the backstory they need. That's not even a couple minutes. It's like maybe less than a minute where they take you to this scene to show that this is how Godzilla got created. We don't have to have a 30-minute backstory. Here it is. But then on one of the ventures out where they're mine hunting, he starts to see sort of radiated fish again popping up all around the ship, and then just out of nowhere Godzilla comes up, and the tugboat that's with them, I guess takes two boats to tow one of these cables to snag mines, just gets obliterated from underneath. So they try to run from him, getting run down there in this little dinky tugboat you can see back behind us, trying to outrun this giant monster iguana, and hit him with a machine gun, not doing anything to him. They drop a mine, gets snared in his mouth. They shoot the mine, it blows up, kind of blows the side of his face off. And I guess they think that they get away, but you see the Godzilla actually just instantly starts to heal back. So you know at that point that monster has changed into something much more serious than he was. And
then the cruiser comes along.
Yeah,
to engage.
They had reports about there was most of the Navy was decommissioned after World War II, so they didn't have hardly anything that had any armaments on it at all. There was still I think it was like a heavy cruiser that I think was still in action because of all the tensions going on between Japan and Russia and the U.S., that they allowed them to keep a couple of ships. So it's coming back. It comes back and engages with Godzilla, which is definitely in the top 3 scenes in that movie, where Godzilla comes up and is wrestling the ship and trying to like flip it over, and they're like rotating gun turrets around and shooting him point blank. It's just freaking amazing scene. If anybody's into like war stuff, just watching all that happen is, it's like, can you rewind that and let's watch that again? That was awesome. But that's the first time you see that he has nuclear breath. He obliterates
destroys the ship.
The boat just erases it from existence. And I guess at that point they get back, the government is has become aware of Godzilla, that there is a monster out there is taking out ships and stuff like that. But the crew knows, even Noda, the weapons engineer guy, talked about how the government doesn't want to panic anybody, so they're gonna try to figure out how to deal with it without scaring the public. So
I did notice while watching the original Godzilla and even Shin Godzilla, there wasn't much of the indecisiveness in this film. When they realized there's this giant beast that is seeking our ships, they're like, we got to do something about it.
Yeah. So then they go from there. They start to send the little tugboats back out to kind of like scout for him. And they do. He comes back to the mainland and comes ashore, and that's kind of one of the big kind of CGI climactic scenes there. he comes in and starts destroying stuff. You get reporters on the roof. That's kind of a cool scene where when you get into the effects part of that, I can talk more about that. Where
that's Ginza, right?
yeah, I think that's just like one of the little districts of Tokyo. But so he comes in, rampaging through the town, and then I guess I think I skipped a little bit of a story there too. Before all that happens, Noriko, the girl, gets a job in town too, right?
Right.
And I think he tells her about Godzilla's existence, and they're trying to not panic the government, or the government's not trying to not panic the public over it, but that's what he's got to go out and do. He comes back, she's like on a train. He's like smashing his way through downtown.
It's silly to say, to use a phrase, unrealistic in a Godzilla film, but her surviving that train seemed very unrealistic to me. I was like, oh, come on.
Yeah, she falls into the water is the only reason she lives. She's just hanging on because the train splits in half and she's sitting there hanging on. It's like,
no way, she would have died.
Grip strength.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've got it in me to hold on. But she also probably is a third of my weight, so maybe she could. But he comes, you get some tank response. Tanks just tick him off. So he launches probably the first like full blown just heat blast, and that scene is so iconic, man. It just blows it up, burns a whole path through the town. You get that little mushroom cloud where it strikes, and then there's the explosion from that. It's just debris flying everywhere, and kind of another spot when you get into this character arc of Koichi, where he's there with trying to help Noriko run down the street. Instead of him kind of protecting her and grabbing her, she throws him out of the way as this blast comes, and she just gets obliterated down the street. And you're like, well, so much for Noriko. And then going back to the scenes and stuff, he comes back around. If I was going to get a tattoo, this would probably be in my top 2 for getting one. He's kind of looking at what he just did with the big smoke cloud of the bomb, and you get like the first just full-throated Godzilla roar, and I'm just sitting there like, this is everything I've ever wanted on film.
They definitely, again, they hit the nail on the head with the messaging and the visuals. Yeah. Like, well, this is what we're alluding to. This is the allegory that we're giving.
By not doing so much, when you make a scene that's that visually striking and that powerful, it makes it even that much better, because you haven't had 30 minutes of that just thrown in your face with CGI, those wild colors, and let's explode everything for an hour and a half of the movie, where it just gets mind-numbing after a while. It makes that kind of thing stand out. But yeah, our main sort of love interest gets just
blown away.
Like, you literally watch her get blown with like chunks of building and stuff. And so he goes back, I guess.
And that's the scene with, and then after this is where like everybody gets together to devise a plan.
Yeah.
To what do we need to do to get this thing?
And that's where kind of Noda takes over, and you have this whole group of guys, shines. And it kind of comes back into the whole redemption theme of the whole movie, is these are all mostly ex-naval soldiers and stuff that lived through World War II and had to surrender their commissions and watch everything be taken away from them, all their rank and any of the glory and stuff that they would have probably thought they had. All these guys come back together to kind of work together, and there's some businessmen there as well. And these guys are operating independently at this point. That's kind of another major point that they kind of make in this is, that the government failed them. And these are the guys that lived through the loss. We lost a war, and now we want to do something good. And so they meet to come up with this plan, and you kind of like, probably we're all going to die. There's a good chance we're mostly going to die. But it's like, do you want to go back home and just sit around and think about the fact that we failed for the rest of your life, or you want to do something? And so that's a kind of a poignant part of the movie, I think, where these guys sort of step up as men and decide that, yeah, that's fine. Certain death, bring it on. let's get it on. And they come up with a plan that's kind of Koichi's idea to surround Godzilla, lure him into a bay, surround him, and then sink him.
By attaching Freon tanks to him, right?
Yeah, and
disturbs the water, right?
Yeah, the
I'm trying to remember exactly how
I think the Freon is
that
actually
works.
when it comes back
The,
up.
when the bubbles come up, he sinks.
Yeah.
Something like that.
I think it's the other way.
The other way?
The bubbles bring him back up.
Okay.
I think. Because I think the idea is you sink him as fast as you can and try to just crush him with the ocean. And then if that doesn't work,
bring him back up quick.
We'll shoot him back up as fast as we can and see if we can just make him
like a balloon
explode from inside out. And they have the engineers there that have all these like little flotation device things they've kind of engineered to get around him. I forgot what they were supposed to be. They were supposed to be some kind of thing to maybe to use on like a ship to cushion a crashing plane or something. I forget what the whole thing was, but they repurpose. They're all using stuff that from the war they repurposed for this thing and just being really innovative with it. It's kind of cool. But so they get their fleet of mostly just disarmed destroyers and cruisers and go back out to or the plan is to go back out and get him. The other plan is that they need to make sure they have a way to kind of lure him there. And you kind of get back into a little arc with Tachibana the mechanic where they have this one plane, and I want to talk about this plane when we get into the effects part of it. They have this one little plane that if they can get it running again, it was a prototype fighter, and it actually is a real thing. But it won't run. They need a mechanic to do it as quickly as possible. So Koichi basically just taunts Tachibana, sends out letters. He gets them. I forget what he says, but it's just to intentionally piss him off. He comes back and finds Koichi and just knocks him on the ground. But it was just to get him back there. Explains everything to them and how Koichi is like, this is my one chance to do, my chance to do something good is to pilot this plane. And if their plan doesn't work, I'm going to kamikaze Godzilla and take him out. So they get this little fighter working.
Narratively, I liked that they gave him that specific character a plane.
Yeah.
Because he could have been redeemed just by helping everybody else in the plan. But the fact that he was able to get behind the sticks of another airplane,
and his
the controls of an airplane,
his duty and what he swore to do in the military was to be a kamikaze pilot.
Right, and actually fulfill that and go back to that promise and keep it.
Yeah.
Or at least attempt to keep it.
Yeah. So you have the little sad story of them trying to get this plane running as fast as possible, and everybody else trying to engineer all this stuff. And of course, as they're getting it together, Godzilla shows up early. They just kind of, I think he's coming to like a bay. Wasn't the exact place they were thinking he was going to. No, he's getting ready to come ashore. Mm-hmm. But Koichi gets in the plane, goes and gets him chasing him, and just basically lures him back to the spot so they can still carry out their plan. And then they try the sync thing with him. He starts to break the cables free or something like that, and I think some of the flotation devices all get torn off, so they can't bring him back up. So the little young dude, Mizushima, gets a bunch of tugboat guys and just local sailors to come out, all hooked to these decommissioned destroyers, so they can pull Godzilla back to the surface. Mm-hmm. And of course they pull him back up. The Freon is involved in that somehow. I don't remember the technical parts of all that, but bring him back to the surface. He starts to freeze, but he's getting ready to just heat blast everybody again. And Koichi comes back with the plane and flies it into his mouth. He's got like a bomb wired into the plane and blows Godzilla up. And then you find out that Tachibana understood that sacrificing yourself isn't as important as being a man for the family and all the other things. So he actually,
he had his daughter to consider.
Yeah. So I guess he pointed out that it was engineered into it. I don't think he edited, but it was engineered into the plane that you could eject. Mm-hmm. So he shows him how to do that, so he can eject, and he ejects.
That was a great scene.
Yeah.
When it kind of like did a little flashback of him telling him, "Look, this is how you eject."
Yeah. That you don't just throw your life away. You've got a purpose. Yeah. You can be a hero and do all that. So you get that. They all come back, celebrate. They took out Godzilla, and then of course the movie ends with a kind of like a Shin Godzilla type thing where you see little parts of Godzilla starting to regenerate as it sinks to the bottom of the ocean. And that's the end of the movie.
And then there's the stinger.
Yes, that is the other Shin Godzilla kind of thing, is that I forgot completely about that. That he gets a letter, I guess his neighbor lady, if I can remember these girls' names, that is Sumiko, brings a letter that finds out, that she found out right after he left, that Noriko is in the hospital, that she didn't die. Somehow or another, in this like blast of debris that would have just shredded you to pieces, she's still in the hospital, so they go find her. He goes and hugs her, and they have their reunited scene, and they give you this little thing where on the side of her neck, as he's hugging her, you see like this like kind of black bruise, kind of looks like radiation poisoning. It could be, almost looks like it's some kind of little symbol is like growing up her neck, and that leads you into, where's that gonna go?
Yeah.
And they don't answer that. So
as someone who hadn't seen a lot of Godzilla, I was just like, what was that?
I have lots of theories on that one. I don't know if it's time to do that, or
but it's not directly alluding to anything, like nothing like that has happened before.
Oh, we come back to that.
Okay.
On the want to get into the effects of it.
Yeah.
If we're there, got pictured here. Really cool video on the official Toho page. They have like a 6-minute special effects video. It's 100% worth watching. It's the one picture
It's
there.
on YouTube.
Yeah, it's the visual.
It's called The Visual Effects of Godzilla -1.
And it shows how much the guys did with so little in this movie. That
I remember that being a big point of discussion, was that it did so well, not only critically, but also financially on such a small budget.
yes, yeah. One of the keys to all this happening was, trying to find his name again, was the director, Yamazaki, maintained complete control over visual effects. He was the writer and director of this thing. And you'll see it visually in this little video. He has a room of all of there's only like 35 artists worked on this whole thing. If you watch like a Marvel movie go, you'll see screen after screen after hundreds from different countries that all work on these things. He had 35 that were basically in a little room all around the edges, and he was in a roller chair, and he went from desk to desk constantly as they finished things, as they worked on things, approving it, giving input into it, saying do more of this, do less of this, this is perfect. And I think that's how you get this kind of quality movie, is that the director to the artist was a direct line. There were no people, there were no committees, there were no assistant directors, there weren't 30 people in between the two. It was just him and his artists. But
well, I mean, it's a singular vision can give you like a cohesive whole.
Yeah.
Did you ever see Thor: Love and Thunder?
No.
There was a visual effect in that. It was so bad. It was like a ethereal iPhone, and essentially what it was a floating head. Like they wanted to talk to somebody that was far away. Their head was just like floating in the air. It looked horrible, and I think that this is the kind of thing that gets avoided when you have a singular vision.
Yeah.
I don't know who worked on that particular effect, but it did not jive with the rest of the film at all. It was horrible.
Those movies where they assign these little pieces to one person and that's their only thing, and those people work on that and it has to be their way.
And they're not in contact with anybody else doing any of the other visual effects.
It literally looks like you take pieces of a movie and put them together. That's why I hadn't seen those, because I kind of gave up on those movies long before that one came out.
Well, you could definitely see it in this film, the unified vision of the film from beginning to end. It's apparent.
He went old school on effects in this thing too, where they did a lot of CGI stuff. They did amazing CGI stuff. If you want to move to the next one, they talk about this in the little video. I saw it in like a DVD extra as well. This little piece of stage that you can see here.
It's just a couple of walls of green screen.
It is the ship that they use for when they're on the destroyers trying to capture Godzilla. It's when the heavy cruiser comes back. All those scenes, the people stand on that little platform and they CGI everything else around it. And
Wait, did they film any of this on the water?
No.
What?
No.
Oh, that's amazing.
This is in a parking lot.
Wow.
And there's no hydraulics. It didn't move. Anytime that they wanted people to be acting like the waves were going, it was old Star Trek.
Nice.
You know, everybody leaning to the side and going like, whoa. And
tilt the camera. Shake the camera.
And that was how they got the wave effects. They show it in this little video. They just have a camera on a boom that's just doing this the whole time while they're shooting, so that you have that motion. And it's literally
it was effective.
That little stage there, and you would have never even seen it. And I don't think I got a screen capture of it. The big destruction scene where it's in all the trailers where his tail's coming around, there's just this whirlwind of debris, and the scene where Noriko gets blown away and all that. That whole street front, there's this little tiny row of just awnings, like at the outside of shops, that is just like that up against a green screen. So it's just like a bunch of little tiny tents. And then they had some green screen a couple of parts over on the ground so they could kind of change what was on the ground. And I think actually add people to it. They had a group of like 70 people like running past this little row of tents, and you go back into it and they built the entire city in and around that. And just visually how you go from that to that that was amazing.
A part of the narrative when talking about special effects in Hollywood is how the best special effects are the effects you don't see.
Yeah.
And everybody knew Godzilla. I mean, Godzilla looked great, but everybody knew Godzilla was a big CG monster. You can tell it's not practical, it's CG. Yeah. But a lot of this stuff, the buildings, the fact that the boat wasn't even on water, like you don't know.
Yeah.
You just can't. You can't.
Or
tell.
that wasn't even like in a downtown. That was in a
right.
The little thing with the awnings and that big destruction scene, that was in another parking lot.
Yeah, wow.
And it's just, you can go back and look at the thing, and it's like, it looks like somebody's setting up for like a yard sale. That's what they had. And they constructed all of that. And the second part of the part, and they get to it in the little short video as well, as the airplane. And I could do a show on this airplane for like an hour. If I talk too long on this, just like hit me with something. This is a real plane. This is the Kyushu J7W1 Shinden. It's
a cool design.
It's a
prototype. I like the rear propeller.
We talked about how Japan was getting firebombed. This thing was designed very late 1944, in response to the fact that we were coming in with high altitude B-29 bombers, and they'd sunk a little bit of budget. They sent Japan history in World War II is a very long thing to get into. They thought the whole thing was going to be this giant battleship sea war, and it was a carrier. We sank their battleships as fast as we could sink them, and as fast as they could send them out of port, we were sinking them, because we recognized that it was going to be air dominance. And we sent out carriers. They sent out battleships with these super big guns that were hard to maneuver, and we just blew the things apart. So they blew their military budget on stuff that never caused any damage to us at all. They were so kind of strapped on that front that there's a fascinating movie called The Wind Rises, one of the Ghibli films, Miyazaki's films.
Okay.
Is about the guy that helped develop the Zero.
Okay.
That's the main fighter that Japan used.
The Wind Rises, right?
Yeah. The whole thing's about the development of that and how he went to Germany and to London and to Italy and got all these design features and came back and built this wooden airplane that was super maneuverable, super cheap, because that's all they could do. They couldn't build these fighters. Like our Wildcat could go up, take 45 shots while out on a mission, and come back and land. You just replace panels.
This thing was made out of wood?
This is not.
Oh, okay.
Their main fighter, the Zero, the ones they used for kamikaze missions, everything was a wooden plane.
I did not know that. That's interesting.
They versus our Wildcats and our Mustangs and the other stuff like that. So we could take 45 hits, return to the ship. Be like, wow, you got shot up. And, yeah. Can you fix it by tomorrow? But yeah, okay. You get a couple rounds from a heavy machine gun out of one of our fighters, 1 or 2 hits to a Zero would blow it apart because it was wooden. But because those wooden Zeros, they couldn't go high altitude. So when we were coming in with high altitude bombers and stuff, they had nothing they could do. They could shoot at them from the ground, and that was it. So this Shinden, was a very last minute design to figure out how to try to. They didn't know we had the atomic bomb coming. They thought that we were just going to bomb them and invade them. That pretty much that was our plan. This thing was designed to climb to high altitudes. If you see the little picture, it's got the propeller on the back. It's just like in the movie. They built 2 of these things. They only got 2 of them built, and this was the first ones. They were ready in April of 1945, so very, very late. And there's the actual picture of the real thing. They didn't have it. It couldn't launch in April because the way the coolant part of the engine, or the cooling parts of the engine worked, it would overheat sitting on the runway waiting to take off. It could air cool in flight, but it couldn't function on the ground.
So once you turned it on, you had to go.
You had to like get in it, turn it on, and take off, or you might burst into flames sitting there. It just ignite all your oil and burn up. So they took it back out. They tried to fix that part because the propeller was where it was, and they didn't really have any offsetting other propelling mechanisms on the plane. That's just part of the aerodynamics of propeller planes. It pulled really hard to the right. The pilots were like, screw it, I can get this thing into the air, don't even try to fix that. We'll fight that part. We're good enough pilots, we can do it. So they never even tried to fix that. They got this thing ready on August the 3rd of 1945, and I don't know if you know your World War II dates or not.
I do not.
3 days later was Hiroshima.
Oh.
So
wow.
They got it up, had like 40 hours of testing with one of the 2 of them, and then we blew up Hiroshima. So wow. That's where that plane fits into history.
Okay.
We actually found both of them. Our servicemen did, as we started to occupy Japan after their surrender. We have one of these things in the Smithsonian dismantled. They just took it apart so they could take it back to a ship, bring it back to study, and it's still sitting in the Smithsonian right now, unassembled. It's not on display. So if you ever want to see the Godzilla plane from the movie, contact somebody at the Smithsonian and say, put this thing together and get it out there. I mean, it's a real plane. It's there. It's an engineering marvel, honestly, because at the time, this is pre-jet fighters. The idea was that this whole design would be a jet plane, but they didn't have the technology to do it. So they put their strongest heavy horsepower engine into the back of the thing and put a propeller on the back of it and just engineered around that. And they show in the movie about how really kind of maneuverable it was, and that's, from everything I've read about it, that's true to fact. It was this crazy thing with the idea of, you're going to be attacking a B-29 that's got machine gunners on the top, and that you're just going to be making yourself impossible to hit as you go up. And I don't know if they intended to shoot the B-29s down or just fly through them and just try to take them out, kamikaze them, because as they did in the in the movie, you got your engine and stuff in the back portion and stuff.
And so the nose is empty.
The nose was there to be turned into a bomb if you wanted to.
Oh wow!
So that part being incorporated into the movie just geeked me out like crazy. I thought I'd heard a little bit about it when I saw the movie the first time, and after that, coming back and reading a little bit about it, and I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, this is awesome. And it's on my list. I don't even do models. I'm going to get that model that was pictured, the picture before that, because I need one. But even as far as the effects go, the way the director talks about it, he said he went to his crew and got his burliest men. That's like the most like 1950s Japanese thing. I need some burly men. They had this little fuselage of this plane that they just had surrounded by green screen, and they had poles running through it. And every time that plane moves for anything in the picture, it's guys rotating the fuselage back and forth with a pole. So the actor's sitting there in it, does his head to the side. There's a guy on the front that's saying, go this way, go this way. And then you watch all these guys that looks like some kind of like little fireman's drill or something you'd see from Japan, where there are all these guys in bandanas that are all just like, they'll roll this way and then they'll roll it back that way. And just the fact that that's the kind of production that went into this movie just makes me love it just that much more. I mean, that's just...
I feel like that needs to be, that viewing of that behind the scenes needs to be like a required for film school or something.
Yeah,
there needs to be a class that just to look at how you can do things practically, even if you're doing it in CG, things like that.
Just that,
like if a Western film were doing a similar setup to where you had the plane and it was against some sort of green screen, they would have some sort of like mechanical arm built that would rotate the plane. They wouldn't bother having people manhandle it.
Yeah, no, you'd be sitting in a chair like this probably and just have everything
Just have all green screen,
green screen around you.
Like Top Gun.
But the amount of how much they went into making everything look period correct and stuff like that, and the links they went to with the ship and stuff like that, I think made this film even better to rewatch it when they came out with the black and white version.
I have not seen that.
I've seen this thing in the theater now 4 times, I think.
Oh, okay.
I've seen it twice, and then the black and white, and I went to watch it again, I think on Election Day, because that was actually November the 3rd is the 70th anniversary.
Okay.
So Election Day was like, what, the 5th or something, so that week they ran it again. I went to, like, that's how I'm going to celebrate Election Day, is I'm going to go watch a Godzilla movie and just pray that the country doesn't explode while we're in the theater. But the black and white version, I think my wife and I kind of disagreed a little bit on that. I liked the black and white version better because seeing it in black and white looked to me like it was made for black and white. Mm. And I think that's just because it makes all of the period pieces look more authentic being in black and white. And I don't know. I like it both ways, but the that version, if you have not seen it, you should definitely try to do. The only thing that hang on one second.
See, I watched the Mad Max. What do they call it? Silver and Black and Silver or something like that. Where it was the black and white version of Mad Max.
Of the new one,
not Furiosa, but Fury Road.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, I probably because it's not really a period piece. It's a futuristic dystopian film. I didn't really feel like that film benefited.
The only thing that it takes away from, I think, in this one is my favorite image, and this would be my number one choice for a tattoo if I was going to get tattooed.
Okay.
Is when Godzilla at the very end is getting ready to hit all the destroyers that are pulling him back to the surface, and he gets down, he's got his arms out and stuff, and he starts to power up his heat ray, and you get that thing where like he's getting ready to shoot, and his eyes are like hyper blue, and his mouth is blue, and that's right before Koichi flies the plane into his mouth. That image of Godzilla, I think, is the coolest thing I've ever seen, and if I had the body for it, I'd just get that tattooed across here, and I'd walk around in an unbuttoned shirt all the time and just be like, hey, what's up? But losing the color out of that part, it still was awesome in black because it's really hyper white versus the black and white and the black and white version, but I still wanted the color in that part. If you could have just made the blue parts blue there, but yeah.
Yeah, if I ever watch -1 again, and that version is accessible, I might give it a go.
I've got it coming.
Yeah,
I think I actually will be here by this weekend. It's a delayed Christmas present that my son ordered, and it got back ordered. But I think the version that I'm getting is it has both versions on it.
Okay.
So.
Black and Chrome. That's what the Mad Max was. Black and Chrome.
Black and Chrome.
That's right.
Yeah, but the
yeah, I feel like Godzilla it makes more sense, especially since there's a history of Godzilla being in black and white.
Oh yeah.
It's very much like a homage.
Yeah. Kind of wish they'd done it with 2014. That would have been interesting to... 2014 is the only American one that I really can say I'm a fan of. The King of the Monsters and the first Godzilla Kong were fun, but they weren't Godzilla movies. The King of the Monsters was, but it's like everything American. The actors they put into it don't know how to do anything without just trying to make everything about them, and I didn't want to watch Stranger Things, the Godzilla story, and that's basically what that was. The monster parts of it are really cool. The story parts of it were, and it's not that you can't have a story in Godzilla. It's like there's a storyline with that whole 2014 movie with the Muto that actually goes into, there's a whole comic series that happens after that where there's other Muto, and I can't remember the names of the agencies. The Monarch is still involved in trying to control things. You could have done King of the Monsters into a little series that kind of went down that story road, but they didn't.
Didn't they have a Monarch show?
Whatever that was on Apple.
Yeah.
I don't know what happens on
Monarch
Apple.
Legacy of Monsters.
Yeah, I have no idea what that was. I don't have Apple, and I'm not ever going to get it. So. I thought the coolest thing that I saw with that was that Kurt Russell and his son were both in it. His son was playing a younger version of himself. But
Well, it says that following the events of Godzilla 2014, it follows the members of the Monarch organization as they encounter Godzilla and other monsters called Titans across a half century, so 50 years.
I've never heard anybody say anything about how excited they were about that, so I'm assuming it didn't turn out well, but I don't know.
I had plans at one point to check it out. Never did. Don't feel like I'm missing anything.
I think that's kind of the general consensus of it. It's there if you want to watch it,
Yeah.
but that's what they should have done.
Well, when I heard it didn't really, like, it wasn't full of Godzilla.
Yeah.
It was more about the organization and the people.
That was kind of my point I was
Okay.
making about 2014 is they had other story in it, and it was an okay story.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't get hijacked by everybody trying to be how many funny one-liners I can say, like it was through King of the Monsters and that whole Marvel poison that's happened to everything, where everybody has to be so witty and everything that we have to say has got a punchline and a joke, and it's just like, come on, guys.
I didn't even bother with King of the Monsters.
It's
I enjoyed the Godzilla versus Kong, but when I saw the trailers, it just kind of turned me off. I was like, I don't need to see King Kong get an Infinity Gauntlet. What?
yeah, no, the
You can leave
inclusion in the Kong is they need to just stop that. That's they want to make Kong movies. Stop letting Godzilla be a decoration
Sidekick.
in a Kong movie.
Yeah.
That's kind of what that's turned into. But the 2014 movie would have been interesting to maybe do a black and white version of, because what they got right in 2014 is they paced it like the 1954 movie. Like it was,
Right.
you're not bombarded with monster scenes. You have to wait for it. When it does get there, it's awesome. But they just didn't. It wasn't just a summer CGI Bonzai flick. It was pretty well put together movie. But
We'll have to look at this because you saying that made me think. I could have swore I've seen stuff about 2014 being in black and white, but I think it might have just been people have done it themselves.
Yeah.
Like they just watch it in black and white, remove the color.
But back to -1.
-1.
I think that's kind of what I've had noted about the effects.
I'm still kind of taken aback by the fact that they were never on the water.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. I mean, the water scenes they did. The scene where they're in the tugboat, that was real. I think they actually show a little thing there where there's just a tugboat, and I don't know if they were pulling something behind that allowed them to illustrate onto it or something. I didn't really understand the picture that I saw of that, but there is a picture or two of them actually being on little tugboats. But all of the big cruisers and battleships and things like that, they didn't have anything like that. They were standing on that little stage and they just CGI'd all of that. But what's amazing about this is next thing I sort of had in my notes from the effects was kind of getting into the box office and the budgets for this thing. And
What was it? 15 million?
they cost $15 million to make, and they report 116 million worldwide on the box office on this thing. It was kind of interesting too. A couple things on that. They began working the idea of writing and working on this thing in 2019, and it got all postponed because of the pandemic. So that gave Yamazaki 3 years to kind of hammer the script out, and it's kind of like one of those things that I don't know. They intended it to be a 70th anniversary release, but it became that.
Got close enough, and they're like, hey.
They're like, I don't know if they were going to plan to do something different, and that all got shelved or what. But it is one of the things that's kind of stupid when you get into contracts and stuff with movies. This thing came out, the 70th anniversary is November of 2024. This thing came out in November of 2023 because of the new empire that Legendary was doing, the second King Kong thing. They had negotiated with Toho that Toho would not release any King Kong material in the same calendar year as them. So because they'd already started production of the new empire, they had to release this thing in 2023, a year before, instead of the actual 70th anniversary, which if it was me, I would have done it the other way. I would have told them, like, this is our 70th anniversary. You can release this next year. But
I feel like it kind of worked well because it went through the theaters and it had a pretty good theatrical run.
yeah, that was 3 weeks, I think, at number one.
Yeah.
So, and it was,
Then they got to re-release it. So
it is number 3 all time non-English films in the U.S. box office history. And I think it made people mad because the one that it passed was Parasite. And whatever reason, people were so enamored with Parasite.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. Did you watch it?
I saw it. I don't honestly remember very much about it. But whatever it was, the reason that people attached themselves to that and giving it all the accolades, I think it made people mad that it passed that. So that was...
By people, do you mean Hollywood people?
Hollywood people,
oh, okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Eh.
Yeah. But then again, it
they can be
around. It got the Academy Award for Best Visual Effects, which was a huge thing for them, especially with...
Well-deserved.
Yeah. And it won 10 Japanese Academy Prizes on top of that, all for effects and best motion picture, best story, all kinds of stuff. So it was an amazingly successful film.
Just as a quick comparison, the Rings of Power TV show on Amazon, the Lord of the Rings show, each episode cost $58 million.
Yeah.
Just as a comparison.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I tried to... I think I've said that to you. I don't want this podcast to be just trashing other IPs and material.
Right.
You could bait me into doing that for hours.
Well, a lot of times, my form of trash is saying, "Well, I didn't watch it." That's a lot of times. That's just it. If it doesn't interest me, I usually don't watch it. I don't hate watch stuff generally.
I'll throw a little Appalachian stuff in here for you. Like my grandma always said, if you don't have anything nice to say, just don't
say anything at all.
Don't say anything at all.
Yeah.
That's just about everything that comes out in this country here lately.
Yeah. But I only have mostly glowing things to say about Godzilla -1 as someone who had like I said, I started with the 1998 Godzilla, and I had seen the 2014 Godzilla, so I was really most of my exposure to Godzilla was Americanized Godzilla.
Yeah.
And so this was really the first film that I really appreciated of the Eastern Godzilla.
When you're 70 years from the original, you're talking about most of the people that were probably hardcore into the original, the old sci-fi nerds of the 60s and 70s have all passed on. So having something like this that will come back around and make something really cool again opens that window to where, wow, I didn't know they made 15 movies in the first era, 7 in the second, 6 in the one after that, 3 in the current one. I don't think I ever said that before. Starting with Shin, that's another era. That's a Reiwa. That's the next emperor. That's the current emperor. So all of this fits into that era. Shin up to -1. The 3 anime things on Netflix, those were actually films that were released in Japan. So
are the only Godzilla films that have direct continuity between them the Godzilla 2014 and Godzilla and Kong and King of Monsters?
No. Some of these go sort of like a 2 or 3 movie arc.
Oh, okay.
And then you'll get into where they'll change to a different director that's going to do a lot of times it's changing from one where he's kind of a protector, kind of fighting
you were saying that
a series of monsters.
Yeah, one movie he'll be protected, and the next one he'll be the antagonist.
Then they'll get a different director to come in, and you'll get one where it's kind of more of it's not really like a mecha movie, but usually it involves Mechagodzilla and then some other kind of really stylized.
Was it Ultraman in there at one point?
That's Jet Jaguar.
Okay.
That's Megalon. That's one of the ones I had on tape.
So that's not even Godzilla.
No, that's it's a Godzilla versus Megalon.
Oh, okay.
But that's such a funny. It's one of those things that's so bad that it's just perfect. I mean,
I really like how it can run the gamut from just like complete cheese. There's that one gif of Godzilla doing like a kick through the air when he's on his tail.
That's from that movie.
Okay, to just like completely serious, straight-faced disaster film.
That's that end of that 70s period. They went with Hedorah, which is the pollution monster, where they were literally trying to. They might have been the first climate change alarmists, where they were trying to make a movie about how pollution is going to become a monster and kill us all. Godzilla kills him, so he stops pollution. And that one,
I don't know what that message is supposed to be, but okay.
That one interchanges with these like weird dance party scenes that are like 70s Batman things. That's such a weird movie. But in that era, and that was kind of where I think they sort of tailed off into 1975 was the last one they made because it was their lowest box office movie ever. That was the Terror of Mechagodzilla, where I think they had kind of lost interest because they had gotten those movies like the one I talked about, the All Monsters Attack, and several of those others really were geared at kids. And I think by doing that, it kind of took it out of that adult level of enjoyment, being more of an edgier thing. And then, like I said, it took a 10-year break before they came back to it. But yeah, Megalon, Megalon is so great. That is Jet Jaguar is just like Ultraman, just a robot that appears, and they kung fu fight through most of that movie with other space monsters. And
see, as a kid, I definitely, in my mind, Godzilla was like Power Rangers.
Yeah,
like they were side by side.
Yeah. There's times where he's doing like little kung fu things with his hands and dancing and jumping up and down and stuff like that. And
that's great. That's great.
Yeah, it's run a full gamut of things from very serious movies to ones that are like, wow, that was really goofy.
No, I told you, I know I showed you a little video of this back when it first came out. I went and saw this in like Regal X or whatever it's called, Screen X, and it had the film screen, and then it actually projected additional footage on each side of the walls of the theater.
You saw what?
So it like expanded the Godzilla -1.
Oh, okay.
I remember I sent a video of you to show you this because I thought it was cool.
Okay.
And it's where the image for certain scenes, not all the scenes, will actually like wrap around you.
We saw
Alien Romulus.
Did you see Romulus with us?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We saw Romulus in the Screen X.
Yeah.
Because I wanted you to kind of experience that. I think it's one of those things you should experience it once.
Yeah.
It's not vital for every movie, and
I can never figure out why it was only some parts of the movie.
I'm assuming that's a budget thing.
I was like, if you want to do it, do it. If not,
that's my feeling of it.
It was
the
kind of
fact
like
that it goes in and out.
You're sitting there watching it, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's stuff there now.
There's stuff to the side. If it was there the whole time, I think it would be more immersive. The fact that it goes away and comes back.
Yeah.
But it was cool to see that. I know the tugboat scene where Godzilla's chasing him. That was a really cool scene, and also the scene where he was attacking Godzilla in the plane. That was another one that was like wrapped around.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that was great. That was in that wraparound screen.
If you think about the fact that the shots of those where you're sitting there, kind of you see the pilot from the side, that's the dude sitting in the little fuselage, and they CGI'd, Godzilla coming up and almost snapping at him and him just barely dodging. Just that animation is amazing.
Now, probably the only persistent question I have about Godzilla -1 is this. When he's in the water in the bay, he's like half out of the water. How's that work? Like, if he was just treading water, like when I tread water, the water's like up to my shoulders.
Yeah.
It's not to my waist. Does he just have some really buoyant thighs? Is that what's going on?
He's got some thick thighs.
Is that what it is? That was really the only decision out of the whole movie that, like I said, aside from Noriko not dying from the train, I was like, okay, that kind of took me out of a little bit, because I'm sitting there, instead of being enthralled in the action that I'm seeing, I'm like, huh, is that really shallow water? What's going on there? Why is he so far out of the water? And then they'll show under the water, and he's like kicking. Okay.
Yeah. Well, he's got the big tail, so
that could be it. That could be it.
Maybe it's spinning
The
around in a
tail
circle.
could be buoyant.
I think I don't remember if it was my daughter or my wife. Their hang up was they're trying to pull him up. They couldn't get, the cranes are collapsing and all this stuff. They can't pull him up. And then the guy shows up with all the other little tugboats and stuff. And then they show there's a whole bunch of tugboats and all hooked, and they're all pulling. And they're like, how did they get that hooked up so fast?
I do remember thinking that all of a sudden they were pulling. That whole sequence with him going down and going up, I didn't really think about it too much. I just accepted. All right,
yeah.
you got to get him to the bottom, and then you pull him up, and that motion of going down and going up with the change in pressure, sure.
Yeah.
I didn't really try to analyze that too much.
There's some parts of being a Godzilla fan that means you just need to go with the movie and
suspend the disbelief.
When you watched him kung fu fight on the moon, you can deal with the fact that he's treading water a little bit easier and just not worry about it.
See, from what I saw of Godzilla, was it called King of Monsters, the one with him and King Kong, the latest American one?
The last one was the New Empire, and then the one before that was just Godzilla versus Kong.
So it was Godzilla's New Empire.
That was the last one.
Yeah,
that was trash.
Yeah, that's the one I skipped. The kind of what I expect them to do next is something like that. Go to the moon or something.
They just need to
what
stop.
else are you gonna do?
If they want to, if Legendary has the license to do Godzilla stuff, do Godzilla stuff. If you want to do King Kong with a Thanos gauntlet, then do King Kong with a gauntlet and leave Godzilla out of it.
I felt like tonally 2014 was so far removed from all the stuff they were doing when it became Godzilla and Kong.
Well, they created old bald monkey, grandpa, evil bad guy in that movie, whatever that was supposed to be. Some little baby Kong, so they could probably try to sell a toy, and then like some weird ice dinosaur that's never existed in any of the stuff. It's like you have 70 years of other monsters that are, some of them are freaking amazing. Like Gigan is my favorite. Gigan's the guy that has the beak and like the two claws. Sometimes he has like a saw on his chest. It's like, give me Gigan. Don't give me bald grandpa monkey. It's like, what is that crap? It's like,
that probably really speaks to some of the difference between Eastern and Western sensibilities when it comes to creating this media. Godzilla Minus One was pretty reverent to the Godzilla franchise. Yeah. Godzilla and Kong, the people who are writing that are like, well, we need to make something else that we made. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. They could just, it's lost on me that it's like, you want to make a kaiju movie, Pacific Rim.
We have Pacific Rim, yeah. You can make kaiju film.
You can do whatever you want to do. You could have King Kong in his own thing. You don't have to. You don't have to pull my monster in and ruin him. On the whole monkey thing, I guess that's the monkey in the on the shoulder here, whatever. I hadn't talked about Norco and the neck thing.
Right. The stinger.
It's confirmed. I think it's actually maybe a video or two down on that YouTube page. There's just this 11-second video that's like, it's official. It's an announcement that there's going to be a sequel. And same director, same writer, saying he's going to be in charge of everything again. So
that's a good thing.
He put that in, so it's obviously in his vision to do something with it. I have no idea what he's going to do. Okay. There's so many things they could do in the canon. There are twins that become the handlers of Mothra, and it's
I think you told me about this. Like it's two humans.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Two, like they're usually they're like miniature little tiny girls that hide like in a little hole. That are the ones that can communicate, and they can call Mothra. And Mothra always lays an egg before it goes to fight because it always gets killed. And that way, it's always gonna.
There's another Mothra.
There's always another Mothra. I could see it being some kind of leeway into something like that. It's the whole idea of the G cells. That G cells can infect things and mutate them. That's Biolante. I've got a poster of Biolante over there. That's why I keep pointing at it.
Okay.
That it could have infected her. Be a stretch, but I guess she could either give birth to something or she could become something.
Give birth to something.
She could give birth to some kind of
Godzilla human hybrid. That seems like something you would see in an American film.
These are all things that I've seen as theories already. That could be that, and she could be that she's gonna just mutate into some horrible kaiju herself. Or that by having, obviously she got blown away. There's no way that she got blown down the street the way she did and came back. She had like a bandage over her eye.
Right.
If that had happened for real and she'd lived, she would have been in a glass bubble and them trying to pin all of her bones back together. So my theory is that she probably got blown away and mashed, and she actually
This is a regenerated person.
Regenerated and healed. And what that means, maybe she'll have some sort of connection to Godzilla. Might just be that simple, that she'll have.
I've seen media like that before, where it's like King Kong. You have the giant beast, the woman that kind of tames the giant beast.
Well, there's been people who can communicate with him psychically in previous movies. That's more.
Well, there you go.
More in the let me pull up my errors there. I know in the later Heisei stuff, the stuff after 1984. I think there's maybe one in there, and I know in the Millennium stuff after 2000, I think there's one or two in there where they try to do it. And that's kind of what I hope they do. Is I hope they introduce another one of the classic monsters. Whether it's, I don't really want to see Ghidorah because I've already seen that. They've done him in the legendary stuff. You bring in Gigan or somebody else cool, and then have her maybe be the one that can call Godzilla back to help. And I'd be good with that.
That'd be a good way to turn him from a antagonist to a protagonist.
Yeah, I mean, he basically just showed up and just kind of blew up everything, and y'all stopped him and all that. But that'd be another good kind of storyline. And they said that it would. I think he said that it would be another very character-based story again. So
I was saying earlier how with Shin Godzilla, I could see the allegory of Shin Godzilla being like maybe about communism or socialism or something like that. The changing of the world and how the political structure was changing at the time after World War II, and the fears of communism. I could definitely see some sort of allegory with Godzilla being a destructive force and then a helpful force.
Yeah.
And that's very much like America. We were a destructive force and then we were a helpful force.
I don't know what his affinity would be towards any of the kind of 70s anime sort of mecha stuff too. I guess there's that possibility that they'll go the Mecha Godzilla route with something.
See, as someone who hasn't seen a lot of it, I feel like I've seen enough of that in the Americanized version.
They come back to it a lot through all of these eras, so it's kind of one of those things you can't come back to it so many times and not just do the same thing.
Right.
And the last one, and the legendary one in the Godzilla versus Kong, I did not like.
Now, has there been any official information about what he's planning for the sequel, like plot wise?
No, that's
okay.
They literally
just
said
that it exists.
He's back in. He's going to control it all, and okay. I think that's what he said. Is he wanted to be another, just like this movie, kind of character-driven thing that revolves around the characters, but still mixes in Godzilla into it. Not in a way of just here's a character story and oh, by the way, here's Godzilla, which is
from watching Godzilla the other day, the original Godzilla. I definitely see how Godzilla -1 was a love letter to Godzilla as a franchise.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
If it's a reboot done right, that's for sure.
I think I even saw I've searched some stuff on YouTube. I think I saw a clip that said it was like even a short that like Steven Spielberg's apparently watched this movie 4 or 5 times and apparently has contacted him just about how much he loved it and all. I guess that he understands that older way of filmmaking that apparently has been lost. And it's
fitting that Godzilla -1 as a film could be seen as a redemption itself.
Yeah.
Especially after what the Americans did to it.
Yeah. And
for the past 10 years.
It honestly should have been a lesson, but I think we see that the folks that have lessons handed to them all the time just continue to stick their fingers in the ear and go la la la, I don't hear you. So, which I'm fine with that. I'm fine letting Japan have my money and and not spending it here.
Well, that I'm stuffed not only from the biscuit but from a lot of Godzilla -1. That was quite a main course.
It's a risky venture to let me start talking about Godzilla.
I like that our conversations before this we're talking about, well, maybe we won't go for as long now. These are going to be long episodes.
Yep.
But that's our main course, and we're going to come back with our dessert and what we're looking forward to.
All right. All right, so we are back for our segment on desserts, and that is basically what we are looking forward to, be in any genre, any media. And then, of course, we also, during the segment, we will pick from our little fortune cookie bowl to see what our topic is for the next show. Mm-hmm. And one of my categories that we already kind of covered, and that is the Yamazaki sequel to -1, so I don't need to go back into that. That was kind of my main one because I just saw that. So if you want to go with yours.
Yeah, Giga Bash. It's a brawling game that includes a lot of made-up characters, but they came out with a Godzilla DLC pack.
Yeah.
And that's really when I started paying attention to it, just because I know Joe likes Godzilla.
Did they not add some Ultraman stuff too?
There is a Ultraman DLC, which I did not get.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
they added some of those.
As far as I know, those are the only two DLC. Those are the only two like official DLC that they added.
Yeah.
But it's just a brawling game. I'm assuming there's a lot of destruction. I brought my Switch, and we're going
I
to play
played it a
after
little
this.
bit before you gave me some points or something to get it on my Switch, which I did, and I played it for a little while. I told you before I want to get my Switch on something bigger so I can see it on the TV because I'm always playing on my little Switch Lite and it's hard to see.
Right.
I'm old, but they had Gigabash at G Fest when I was there in 2023. They had it projected onto a wall.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we could play it. Martha and I sat there and played it for a while. We played it with some other people that came by. And Martha, of course, beat everybody because she just did the mash one button as fast as she could thing. And you can try to do all your strategy you want to when there's somebody in the corner is just doing this. They win. But yeah, it's a cool game because you power up and stuff like that. It's, the more you destroy, and you have some times where you turn supersized compared to everybody else,
cool.
and you're powered up, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
I'm not a big fighter game guy because I played things like Smash Brothers and stuff with people that live and breathe this stuff.
Right.
And just sit there and watch my character just get ping ponged back all over the screen while I'm trying to hit buttons, and like I didn't do anything.
I'm definitely the kind of player where I'll play Gigabash against the computer for a little while and be like, hey, I'm getting pretty good at this. And they'll go online and get destroyed.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Or
if a game has a story mode, that's where I live.
Even if those games, you get to a point where you try to increase the difficulty where you can't even beat the computer. I can't even beat the computer. I'm saying some people probably can destroy the computer, but it's not my my genre as much.
There have been a couple of games where I'm competent against like the hard mode.
Yeah.
But if there's usually like a nightmare mode or something, no, forget about it.
I came through college with a roommate that had Mortal Kombat 2 on, I don't know what that even would have been on. Would that have been on a Sega or a PlayStation?
I know Mortal Kombat 2 was on the PlayStation. Okay. I'm not sure if it was also on like the Genesis and Super Nintendo.
It might have been a Genesis. But whatever it was, I played that enough, wasting time in his rooms. I got pretty good at that.
Oh, there you go.
But that's about as deep as I've gone into that.
Tekken was my big, in high school, that was my big fighting game that I played.
What did we play?
Tekken 3 on the PlayStation.
Soul Calibur?
Soul Calibur or Soul Blade? Probably Soul Calibur.
Soul Calibur.
Yeah.
We had that here and played it with the kids as they were growing up. Maybe it wasn't on the Wii.
There is a version on the Wii.
Maybe it was on the Wii.
That one had Yoda?
We had
I think it had Yoda.
There was one or a edition or a game that came out.
Or Link. Had Link.
Yeah. We had the one before that, but we played that because I think Logan was probably in middle school at that point, and of course it had the busty anime characters in it, and he thought it was funny. I did too.
Still do.
I giggled all the way through the Dan to Dan talking about them chasing the nuts.
There's Street Fighter 6 that has been recently coming out. They're getting a lot of attention for that very reason.
Yeah. It draws
It
draws
does,
fans. It draws the attention that you want. So,
well, the next thing you're looking forward to?
My second one is kind of brief, and I just saw a little. I think it was some kind of little press release or something about the upcoming Avatar stuff that's going to come out on Paramount, and this has been pretty long delayed. I think I don't know why. Don't get into all that as much, but DiMartino and there's another guy that were the two main writers and creators for the original Avatar: Last Airbender, and then the Legend of Korra series that followed it. They were involved with the stuff that was on Netflix, and apparently Netflix did not want to do. They had different visions. Netflix wanted to change their vision. They're like, nope, this is my story, my stuff. We're taking our toys and going to go play elsewhere. So whatever that was you got on Netflix didn't involve the original creators, and I think that showed. I didn't watch it, but I've seen enough people complain about it to get the idea that it was not very good. But they were given on Paramount basically, supposedly free reign to make like a Marvel universe of Avatar. Do whatever they want to do, movies, series. They have a follow-up movie. I think it's going to be the first thing where it's Aang after the events of the original series. I'm not sure how far after, but Aang. But the whole thing with the Avatar is that you don't get a new Avatar until the old Avatar dies. So the Legend of Korra deals with her after Aang's already died. And you get some flashbacks in Korra to Aang as an adult and some of the things that happened as they kind of formed the Republic City that they were in. Very cool follow-up to probably the best animated show I've ever watched. One of my favorite all-time TV shows, animated or not. It's great. I'm gonna eventually
Watch it.
I'm gonna get some food here and lock you in and make you watch it all, because you have to watch in the original series. You have to just get through. It's a kids show, and
Yeah.
that seems to be what's forgotten with everything, is that these were all kids shows, and kind of where Korra ends up going is that people that don't have kids kind of take over it and try to make it a show for them instead of a show for kids. But they're going to make this movie. It's a follow-up, and then they have their plans kind of laid out for the series of the next Avatar that follows Korra. And I'm not going to speculate on that too much. I see some things there that are things that could be really cool, and I could see things that are going to be a disaster, and it just depends on which group of people are involved and who gets their way, honestly, with that show.
All the animated versions of Avatar, so I'm not considering the movie, or wasn't there a live action series recently?
That's the Netflix thing.
That's the Netflix thing.
And there was that awful M. Night Shyamalan movie. That was just...
But like the Netflix series and the movie, like there's no continuity there. And there's no continuity between the Netflix series and the animated series, is there?
What the Netflix series was just a live action retelling of the first thing, and they couldn't even do that right, and that's just.
But these things that are coming up is in continuity with both the original Last Airbender and Korra, right?
What I've heard, and I think this is reliable. I don't think it's just speculation, is that Korra, the Airbender or the Avatar that takes over for Aang, that she dies, and part of whatever happens with her causes some kind of global chaos. Probably it almost sounds like destruction. It kind of almost sounds like it goes back to tribes or something. And the next Avatars, and this is kind of where I'm not sure what I think about it until I just see how they do it, is supposed to be twins, a brother and sister, which kind of doesn't really work.
they watched The Last Jedi and said, or what's the very last, the Skywalker?
Oh, I don't know.
Rise of Skywalker? Is that what it is? It's just falling on my brain. I don't care about the movie so much. But they watched that and they said, hey, I like that premise.
The
dyad.
The whole idea is that it's one being that's reincarnated. Right. And the only time it can ever be broken is that if you are in the Avatar state where you're on full-on destruction mode, somebody kills you in the Avatar state, you break the line, and the Avatar's gone forever. And somehow or another, they're going to have two twins that both are Avatars. And I don't want to get into the all politics stuff of the show, but the way they ended Korra took it off in a direction that was away from being a kid's show. Kind of got into this little everything about me people that make Marvel and Star Wars stuff. Kind of started. It may have actually been kind of the first series to really do that.
Well, thematically, I definitely hear, from what you're saying, I definitely hear some similarities with the Rise of Skywalker, with Rey and Kylo being a forced dyad, and they even, I didn't watch it, but there was a series where they also had a forced dyad, where it was the Acolyte, it was Star Wars Acolyte, and it was two girls, and they were twins, and they were a forced dyad. So I mean, it sounds just like that.
If that's what they're going for, then it's probably just best that I don't have Paramount.
Well, just wait until it finishes and see what people say about it. Hope for the best.
My hope for the best is that Korra was you don't see very many sequel series that were as strong as Korra was following the Avatar. And it's because I think the DiMartino, and I don't know what the other guy's name is, bless his little heart. He's got a name. I'm just not looking it up right now. But they were very strong series. And with Korra, they took a lot of what they probably were too scared to do in terms of intensity and violence and stuff in the first series, and did it in Korra. And the bad guys were scary. I mean, to the point that little children would be bothered by them. And you had you had very sketchy, very frightening bad guys. You had a waterbender villain whose arms had been cut off, and she just made herself water arms, and she was like,
That sounds awesome.
she'd been tortured, and she was this evil, vindictive, murderer. that was one of the characters, and they kill maybe. It's implied that there's maybe one character killed in the whole series the first time, and they kill multiple people in the second series, like blowing up their head, killing them, kind of thing.
What this might be a indication of between Korra and the new shows coming up, a lot of times you can tell when they have a story to tell and they get to tell that story versus there's something popular they want to make more of.
Yeah.
A lot of times you can just see from the heart that comes out of the show or the media whether or not it's done purely for revenue purposes.
He wrote very good. He was a very good storyteller through the first two series, so I hope that carries over into this.
Hopefully.
But you also had
what else has
that ended before 2020, and you had such a shift in the way people do things from 2020 to now that some of the people that used to be able to do good things can't anymore. And I don't know. I'm going to see what happens and probably just sort of watch that from afar. And if it looks like it's worth watching, I'll watch it. And then if it turns into just another disaster, then it's no skin off my back and it didn't cost me anything.
Has he done anything else?
Not that I know. Well, he's been after the Korra thing, they went into a whole comic series.
Oh.
And it was kind of exploring what they did at the end of the Korra stuff, which was a really departure from what the whole point of Korra was. But that was where they chose to go, and that's kind of why I'm hesitant to be excited about this series, because if they come back with that, then I'm not interested. But if they come back and want to tell a good story about the Avatar again, that's fine. We'll see where it goes.
Well, I think there are enough old fans that you'll probably get a good feeling about what the kind of people who like the series as you liked it.
And Lord knows
what their thoughts are before you actually watch it yourself.
Lord knows there's enough YouTube people that have to tear apart everything and analyze everything that you'll get a pretty good shot of what's going on before.
I guarantee you there are going to be some people who hate it just to get the clicks.
Yeah.
So you'll definitely get that.
I've gotten pretty good at kind of deciphering those
the
people,
BS from the
ones that just come
opinions.
on to just tell you what they hate, and ones that actually give you decent reviews of it and what was good and what didn't work and what could have been good, kind of parts of shows. So not holding my breath on that one, but I would love for it to be good, because you do go pretty long stretches between anything that's really memorable in recent years. So we're kind of owed some good stuff, I think.
Hopefully. Speaking of owed good stuff, ever played BioShock?
I don't think so.
Okay. There's a whole franchise of games called, that people colloquially call it the Shock franchises or Shock genre.
Okay.
And it's marked by first person, RPG elements, deep exploration, and that game Prey that you talked about earlier.
Yeah.
That's kind of considered to be a Shock game.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of thing where you have pretty deep customization systems, but good gameplay, good gunplay along with it.
Yeah.
And there's a game coming out called Atom Fall. It releases on March 27th, first person game. It's set in like the UK in the 60s after, and I had to learn about this, after the Windscale nuclear disaster. And this was Britain's biggest nuclear disaster in history. Then this game says, well, what if it was worse? And so it's sort of like, thematically, it's like Fallout, where it's after this disaster, and we're having to deal with mutants and stuff like that. Yeah. And it almost reminds me of this other game that I played called Atomic Heart, which is set like in Russia, and it's like an alternate 1950s where Russia figures out this almost like a metamaterial. And their technology like blows past everybody else's technology, so they become really advanced really quick.
Yeah.
But that's not set in the same world or anything. It's just like stylistically it seems similar. And there's the BioShock series that people definitely love it. This really gives the same kind of feeling as that BioShock game. So you're definitely going to have some good gunplay, some magic type abilities, and usually it's magic, but they kind of give some sort of scientific explanation about why you're shooting ice out of your hand or something.
What is the thing I'm getting bombarded with the ads all the time that they're advertising right now?
I don't know.
There's a thing like that where they're showing dudes like shooting arrows, and somebody has like 6 arms, comes up and is doing some kind of magic. It looks like it's a first person thing. They run
Overwatch.
No.
I'm trying. The guy with the six arms sounds familiar.
It's on ads on like Hulu and YouTube and stuff all the time. I see the ad all the time.
That's probably a competitive shooter.
Yeah.
They call them hero shooters. Apex Legends. That sound familiar? No. Anyway, this is thankfully a single player game. I tend to stay away from those multiplayer shooters because, again, I'm not great at them. But yeah, this is a narrative driven, alternate history, 1960s style, like nuclear punk. And I'm just looking forward to it. It's coming out on the 27th. I'm not sure.
Anything that kind of bases themselves in something that has some historical story is there. It's an easier story to tell because you don't have to come up with the whole background.
And one of the things that I'm looking forward to is the setting. We don't get a lot of alternate history or even fantasy type settings that's set in the UK.
Yeah.
So that is definitely and similar with Atomic Heart. One of the reasons I was interested in it was because the setting was Russia. Yeah. So I am definitely looking forward to that. I'm not sure if I'm going to get it. I'm notorious. I'll look forward to a game. I'll wait till it goes on sale or something like that.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely going to watch like reviews and videos when this comes out. I'll probably watch some Let's Plays. So I'm looking forward to seeing what it.
Probably safe route to go. I remember waiting for Last of Us 2 to come out and was like, oh, this is going to be amazing. And then I think the first time I heard something about it is like it had already been out, and somebody at our booth at the mall, we were set up there that one year at Christmas time, came by, and however we got to that topic, is like, you haven't played it yet? I'm like, no, I haven't played it. And he was like, dude.
Did he spoil it? Did he spoil it?
He was like, man, don't.
I'm not going to spoil it.
No, I've watched reviews and stuff and had it spoiled, but it's one of those things that I'm glad there were some review warnings on that one and had some time to do it, because I would have got very excited about buying that and come home and probably not been very happy.
I've yet to play it, not because I'm doing a kind of boycott or I'm refusing to play it. I just literally haven't gotten around to it.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons, like with Atomic Fall, I'm probably not going to buy it right away unless I see the stuff I see, like with Atomic Heart when it came out. I was like, I gotta get this. I have to play this game right now. I want to play it. If I feel that way about Atom Fall, I'll get it. But for the most part, I have enough games to play. I'm in no hurry.
Last of Us, the main character is an old grizzly dude named Joel.
Yeah. I can see why you would identify with Joel.
They literally put me into a video game. I was like, you can't do that to me.
Speaking of
that kind of ties in a little bit to my next.
Yeah, speaking of dystopian in England.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because this is another one that takes place in England, and trailer came out a while ago. I think I had this on the tab to talk about last time, and I don't think we ever got to it. And that's just the 28 years later. Is that supposed to be? Oh man, Killian?
I don't think so.
I've heard some people say they think that's supposed to be Cillian Murphy.
Cillian Murphy. He's like Cillian Murphy zombie, huh? Maybe.
But you've seen the trailer. It's oh my gosh, Kipling. Isn't he the Jungle Book guy? Richard Kipling.
I don't know his name.
It's an old World War II poem about soldiers like either marching home or marching to their death or something that they're reading.
They're reading it over in the trailer.
Yeah, over that trailer, and the trailer is just like, oh my gosh, it's a very striking trailer, and you see it's not anybody I recognize too, which I like, because usually in a movie like that you're freer to just tell a story if you just don't have to cater to some actor,
I've come to look forward to movies more if I don't explicitly recognize the person in it. there are certain actors and actresses that if they're in it, I'll definitely go see. But
I mean, think about it, the first 28 days later.
I mean, well, yeah, Cillian Murphy was in it, but he
Murphy
wasn't.
and Naomi Harris. Nobody knew either one of those people.
Yeah, they weren't famous they weren't hugely famous at the time.
Yeah, I mean, there's some people that might have known them from some little indie and British movies or shows or something. But
Right.
Naomi Harris is going to go down as the dream that never was. That I always talk about all the gunslinger stuff. The Dark Tower series is that she is the. We talked about Laura Croft and Angelina Jolie being the human embodiment of that character. She is the human embodiment of Odetta Holmes from The Gunslinger, and now she's going to be aged out of that by them not ever making that. But back to that, this is supposed to be 28 years later. Looks like things have not gotten better. Like they've almost kind of gone tribal. It kind of looks like where whoever's left are in small groups, and hopefully not. It's just not a 2-hour Walking Dead, where this group has to kill that group kind of thing. But don't know where it'll go. But
you trust the series enough to where you're going to give it a shot.
What is his name that did Train Spotting and 28 Days Later and all of those films? I don't think I've ever seen
Actor?
him. No, the director, writer,
Danny Boyle.
Danny Boyle. I don't think I've ever seen him miss, and he's the one behind this. So that gives me hope that will be something good. Yeah, I guess you kind of get to the point. How much more can you do with the zombie genre?
Yeah.
Sunshine's another one.
Sunshine was a beautiful film. I love that movie.
It's a great movie.
Yeah, he did The Beach. He did 127 Hours, which was good.
Yeah.
Slumdog Millionaire was also good.
Yeah.
He's competent, so hopefully.
Yeah. So it's, who knows? I guess it's unfortunate that we reached that point that you just hope that something new doesn't suck. That you can't get truly excited for it until it comes out like it used to be able to, because
fool me once, shame on you. Fool me 12 times, shame on me.
Used to be that anything that came out that was big budget was good.
Yeah.
But we'll see. That's really the only other thing on my list, because
I need to see 28 Weeks Later before that comes out.
Very good follow-up. She's young in that movie, so I won't creep on it, but she's closer to my age. That's the first movie that I saw Imogen Poots in. She's playing a teenager in that. But
what else is she in?
Green Room. She just did. She did the series Open Range on Prime. They just canceled it. It was awesome.
I don't explicitly recognize her.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she's in 28 Weeks Later. She's the older sister.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm married, so I can't say anything else further. I wish her well things. I wish her good things.
Well, hopefully the movie is good. Yeah. The next thing I'm looking forward to is a comic book. This is the TMNT Mutant Nation. The series has been going on for a little while now. There are a few issues in. Went to the comic store a couple weeks ago, last week, and picked up my stack of books, which included a few of these issues. It's been a few months since I've been to this particular comic store. And I thought it might have been like a subtitle to the current IDW Ninja Turtles, but it's a side story. It's that issue that I've complained about where, well, I'm reading the Ninja Turtles. Oh, well, here's another series that you have to keep up with. Well, I'm doing it now. Maybe I won't do it in the future. The premise of Mutant Nation kind of goes off of something that the IDW did in the previous Ninja Turtle series, where the people became aware of the Ninja Turtles. Like the general public knew that mutants existed. They quarantined a little part of New York City, and that was like Mutant Town.
Okay.
And so I didn't really care much for that, because a part of the Ninja Turtles was always, well, they have to hide from people and stuff like that.
It's kind of turning it into the X-Men.
X-Men, exactly. That is the Mutant Nation that's one of the things I'm kind of worried about, is that if they're going to lean a little too far into the Well, we're not like regular people. We're mutants, and so you just tread the exact same plot points that the X-Men have treaded. The first issue has Raph getting in a bar fight, which is it's good fun. He's going across country on a motorcycle, and that's kind of, I have an image up of that right now. I'm looking forward to it.
It's an interesting rendering of him. That's what I'm looking at. It's not.
I do like overall. I do like what IDW has done with the Ninja Turtles visually. I think they've done them justice.
I don't know if you just showed me that picture with no other context.
If you knew it was Raph.
That's a Ninja Turtle.
Oh yeah. He's a little thin.
I was like, that's a green dude.
It's a green dude. Yeah. Yeah. And the last thing that I'm looking forward to this coming month. This comes out March 7th. This is In the Lost Lands.
For those that can't see, we pulled up the Spanish poster.
The Spanish poster.
Tierras Perdidas.
That's right.
Perdidas.
And I am looking forward to this movie, which I'm sure is going to be fun. I'm not going to watch it because I think it's going to be high quality. Yeah. It is by Paul W.S. Anderson.
I think I mentioned that one in our last one that I saw that and was like, huh, okay.
Yeah. Paul W.S. Anderson with Dave Bautista and Paul's wife, Mila Jovovich.
But it's written by George R.R. Martin.
Yes, it's George R.R. Martin. I did not know that.
I think that's why I was mentioning it, was because I was mentioning how people want more Game of Thrones, all that stuff.
But he keeps doing other stuff,
and he keeps getting sidetracked into stuff like this.
Yeah. Okay, so the plot might be a little better, but I mean it's Paul Anderson. It's you know what you're getting when you go into a Paul Anderson film.
Resident Evil Part 12.
Yeah. But I enjoy, with the exception of the latest Hellboy, not the latest, the Hellboy with Mila Jovovich.
Which one was that?
It was the one, the actor who plays Hopper in Stranger Things.
Yeah.
He's the one who played Hellboy.
Okay. There was a Hellboy since then, right?
Yeah. It was that was like a indie Hellboy in a cabin or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, the one with the guy who played the David
Harbour.
Harbour. Yeah, the one when David Harbour played Hellboy. That film. They tried. They tried.
I did not watch that one.
But that's really the only film with Mila Jovovich that I've seen that I was just like, no, it wasn't great.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to it. So that is on March 7th. I will probably go to the theater to see that.
I'll let your review inform me on that one.
I'll let you know.
I think I'll probably spend my money on another one of those bologna biscuits before I go do that.
And that is our dessert. That's what we're looking forward to.
I picked last time. You picked this time on the fortune cookie bowl.
I'm gonna go right in the middle. Let's see what we got. This will be our topic for next week.
Probably won't be another Godzilla one because that was the only one.
No more Godzilla. For now, we might watch more later. Oh, this is going to be fun. Both of us have been looking forward to this. Mishandled properties. So this is intellectual properties, and I guess it could be across any sort of media that have just been bungled.
Do we need to limit it to a top blank number of them? Or Mount Rushmore?
We may. We'll look into it. We may have to limit it.
Top 5, maybe Mount Rushmore, top 4 mishandled properties.
Maybe.
Because otherwise that could be a pretty infinite discussion.
Yeah, it could. Well, we'll make our lists and we'll see if we have to pare it down.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure there are going to be some crossover to where we want to talk or complain about the same property.
Yeah, I would say we'll make our lists. Any of the crossovers will go automatically onto it, since it's one that we both have decided.
Absolutely.
And then we'll fill in maybe another spot or two with
if we can get
one that kind of swings more to you or me.
Yeah, if we can get a couple of, if we can get, let's say, 2 or 3 crossovers and then one of each from us, I think that'd be great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's it for Appalachian Dim Sum, episode 2, Godzilla Boogaloo.
Time to go take a nap and try to process all the carbs and
Yeah.
stuff that we just destroyed.
Okay, well, Joel, I'll see you next time.
It's been fun.
Yeah, thanks.
See you.